mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. I'm only here to even a score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. We're down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is on up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is on up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I am back. Last week I missed out because I was sick. The week before that I was in Utah, but I'm back for the show this week. Remember, welcome to the Knighted Ones. This is episode number 74. We are the only podcast that features a former UCF national champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst and hoops player, an infamous, yes, that's infamous rapper, our resident influencer and IG star shooting the breeze, talking UCF sports. Remember to like and follow us on YouTube, IG, and check out the 70-plus teams and conferences on the College Huddle, of which we are a proud member. This week's show, first of all, let me say this. Shout out to Nobra and his girlfriend on their anniversary. Thank you to Josh and Alan for holding it down for us this week. And this week's show is extra special because we have a special guest that you guys haven't seen in an entire year, but we're excited to have. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start bringing the crew up to the stage. First to the stage is Alan Levin, our resident influencer. What's up, Alan?
Hey, how's it going, Roger?
Good, man. I kind of screwed up the beginning there. I left the UCF Fierce a little bit on there too long, but that's what I get for not having a producer this week. I forgot how to do it. Glad to have you back, and thank you for last week, my man.
Yeah, we make it work when we're shorthanded. All good.
All right. Last but not least, but always last, and since we're shorthanded, last very quickly, Josh Lazar, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
Well, hello, world. Yeah, doing good. It's weird not hosting or having Alan host. This is like 3 different hosts in 3 different weeks. I like it.
Yeah. Well, we're getting back on the horse again, so unfortunately, you guys are stuck with me hosting and producing this week. So hopefully I don't muck it up too much. But the most important person on this week's show is someone we all have grown and loved. And if you're as old as Josh and I are, you actually got to see him play. One of UCF's legends and our current head coach. Welcome to the stage, Coach Wally. Thank you again for joining us this year. We're excited to kick off another baseball season.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Same here, man. Can't wait to get this thing going.
Yeah, year one, I mean, you came in, you took over a roster that, that you didn't know what you were going to have. You brought some pieces in that you knew from your previous stops that really helped us go. And we ended up in a regional your first year. So tough act to follow, but one that I expect with this program and this team that you will continue to keep us going in that direction. Tell us a little bit about that first year. You come back to your alma mater. That's got to be a really, really special thing. Obviously, you've been around UCF sports even when you weren't here. People don't know. If you don't know, you've supported. If you don't know, now you know. You've supported all of the programs. You were a football season ticket holder, all of these things. But tell us what it was like for you. We kind of talked about the expectations, but what was it like being UCF's head coach after having been such a successful part of a team here?
Yeah, and I think it was all surreal, all of that, and a whirlwind of how in the heck you're gonna. You think you think you're ready, but you don't really know exactly what you're getting into because, like you said, I followed UCF from afar. Even when I left the first time and I was recruiting the state of Florida, and when you're trying to build other programs, you end up not going to some of your midweek games as a recruiting coordinator when you have to make a significant roster change. So I'd be in the state of Florida driving from junior college to junior college, and UCF would be on the radio playing. I'd listen to Mark Daniels at that time when he was when he was doing that stuff without a color guy. So I had a feeling of, what the program was, what was going on, where I thought I could help. And then you get into it and you're like, okay, there's a lot of things that need to catch up with where we want to take this. So dealing with all that, but every day, I haven't felt like I've worked a day since I've been back. This is the only place I wanted to be, the only program I wanted to run. And I'm fortunate that the administration's kind of let me do it the way I want to do it, in almost every aspect that they could. So just excited about it.
Yeah, that's a big thing, right? A lot of coaches go into established programs, and they have a lot of influence from the staff. And I get the sense that Terry believes in you, like we all do. We all knew that you would do well. Actually, when we were debating about who the potential coach was, yours was a name that came up several times in a row. If we could get you, we were lucky enough to land you. But what's it like working for someone who allows you to be you? And I assume that means that, you have your regular check-ins, but he really empowers you to go out there and run the program the way that you want to run it.
Yeah, and I think that starts with him. The leadership from Terry is like, we're supposed to run this thing at an elite level in every aspect. That's the expectation. That's the standard. So that's what going into it. But he wants you to be yourself and push this thing. And I tell him, the gas pedal, I mash it to the floorboard, man. We got a lot of stuff to do, and I'm not here to wait around. I want to be here till the end of it, but I'm not waiting around for it. So that's something that we both agreed on and how to do it. And we talked about it during the whole process. And he believes in what we're doing, not just me, but everyone on our staff. Like, he let me pick the staff exactly how I wanted it. Was behind it all. He was involved in it, but didn't have a say one way or another. So he felt like he was in that part too. And the stuff that he's done since I've been here to help us budgetarily, from our coaching staff salaries to the recruiting budget to you name it, just the way we go about everything with the facility and where it's going, we couldn't ask for more.
Yeah, that's something that's coming up that Terry actually talked about this week with Mark Daniels, and we'll talk a little bit more about that interview. He mentioned, we were talking about the changes and how we're going to become full-fledged members of the Big 12 as far as monetarily coming up, at the House settlement and everything that's going on there. He said that we were going to increase our scholarships by 71 scholarships. None of them to go to football, which means that baseball should get a full docket of scholarships. Do you already have a insight into what that's going to look like for the team?
Yeah, I don't know how much but we were dealing with 11.7.
Yeah,
we're going to 25 scholarships. So nice. We'll have 34 guys on there, 25 scholarships, but we can break it up however we want, and that's really going to allow us to do kind of what my ultimate goal is get a majority of our roster through school and not having to go get student loans, and being able to make those families comfortable with sending their kids here. And that's the same thing. My mom was a single mom. UCF worked for me because of the scholarship situation, bright futures, and I was home. So I don't know how else I would have done it. And I'm trying to provide that for the next group of nights as well. And obviously the 25 scholarship will help immensely.
Yeah. And does I've got a little bit of experience in recruiting and how that works, especially when it comes to softball, because I've got some friends whose daughters now have recently gone to the collegiate level and D1. That really is a hamstring when you're competing for recruits. What kind of difference is that going to make for you, do you think? Obviously, we've gotten some really quality recruits, and obviously you're going to have the draft that you have to deal with every year when it comes for kids coming out of high school. But how big of a difference is that for you on the recruiting trail to be able to say, hey, I've got 25 spots to fill up that roster?
Yeah, and it's huge. Like I've recruited at, you name it, the most expensive school arguably in the country, and in Notre Dame and other private schools where the dollar amount, the cost of the family was huge. Like, I'm a parent now and I'm thinking about it. We talk about percentages of scholarships and you get it out with a parent, but at the end of the day, the parents said, how much is it going to cost for my son to come here and play? And to eliminate that from the decision making and get it about where you're going to school, where you're living, who's coaching you, what's the team like, how's it going to be run, all the important things. how am I going to be developed? Can we compete for championships, and make the recruiting about that and our vision versus can I actually afford to do this? I think it cleans it up for everybody, and we're choosing the university one and the baseball program for the right reasons.
Yeah. It's a huge deal. I mean, travel ball is not cheap. But going from travel ball to collegiate ball is a whole nother level, especially D1 when you're talking about all the costs, especially for out-of-state kids. I know your focus has kind of been making sure that we're grabbing some of those baseball phenoms because we've got a lot of talent in the Central Florida area. What would you say your guys' recruiting approach has been there as far as kind of putting a circle around Central Florida versus going out of the state, and how's that going?
Yeah, like I said before, it has to start here. Like we have to exhaust every resource up and down I-4 around Orlando. And it really started with just our relationships with the local coaches in the high schools and making sure that we are present and out. The other thing that we did, we brought back our high school fall instructional league, which is a camp basically that we run, that we bring. I think we had 12 high school teams in our camps for a month playing on our field every night, and us getting involved in instructing it and setting it up. That was something that, to be honest with you, if they wouldn't have done that at UCF in 1998, when I was a high school player, I don't know if they would have ever seen me, but I spent 2 nights a week for 5 weeks straight playing at the old field on the other side of campus. And when that thing ended, I got a scholarship offer from Coach Bergman at that time. And when I was here the first time, we had all those local kids, like I would have said half of them came through that league at some point or another, from Cody Allen to you name it. Like it was Chris Duffy, all of them were in that league at some point. That's helped us. And Coach Thomas, Coach Lopez, Coach Tom are excellent recruiters, and I try to get out as much as I can just because I love that part of it. It kind of got me to where I am now, so I can't stop doing it. So just all 4 of us kind of going to that and really attacking it and making that a priority, I think starting to see the dividends. And now recruiting is so far in advance that we were a little behind the 8 ball with some of the recent classes, but our 25 class has a handful of local guys, same thing with 26. And I want to make sure that we exhaust every resource to recruit these kids, even if we don't get them. Because I've recruited all over the country too, and it always came back to Central Florida at some point. And that's true with ACC teams, SEC teams. Even other Big 12 teams, they all come to Central Florida to find support because there are so many good players. So they're involved in that recruiting. And if we can't get them the first time, if something doesn't line up, I want to make sure that they understand that we wanted them here to begin with, that they feel good about how we recruited them. Because as you know, it's 10 months later, they could be right back in our dugout if we do it the right way.
So, kind of going along that theme, tell us a little bit more about the incoming transfers or freshmen. Like, who should we be looking out for? Night Nation, I kind of follow recruiting, right? And so does Ben and a few of the other members of the show. But, the average Joe doesn't. So tell us a little more about the incoming transfers or freshmen that you're really, really excited about.
Yeah, I think I'll start with the transfers. And to think 15 years ago that I would have left the NCAA tournament or coaching a game and head to the Cape to recruit people that are in the transfer portal, like that would boggle my mind that that's even a thing that was happening. But that's pretty much what happened. We left that. We recruited a little bit. I went to the College World Series, which was our dead period. And then we left and we went to the Cape, and up there, besides our guys, like Tyler Kozera was up there. But Chase Cruson, who's going to come in and play the outfield for us, has been absolutely dynamic. Left-handed hitter that's got power, that can really hit. Good athlete, can really defend. He'll factor in the outfield. Transfer from Duke, that he hit .330 in the ACC as a freshman. I think he'll adapt pretty well. Yeah. And then Diamaz Ross was up there playing for the Brewster Whitecaps. Obviously, I got to coach him as freshman year at Florida State. Just, you watched it, like we were just missing that true leadoff. Andrew Brake did everything he could to help us in that position, but he probably was more suited as a 2-hole hitter. Yep. Now we got that guy at the top of the lineup, left-handed hitting runner, leadoff, just pesky guy there. And then Antonio Jimenez was up there playing for the Wareham Gatemen. And he hasn't even scratched the surface of how good he can be defensively, and I think he's really good. He's got some special tools, and he's gotten better and better and better every day. He'll be at short, and the offensive stuff, it's the same way. The tools are off the chart. Can we clean it up a little bit? And he's gotten so much better since he's been here. That would probably, I'm trying to think here, the junior college transfers, Kendry Maduro from Northwest Florida, another really good athlete that's going to play third base. Edion Espinal from Chipola, 2-time all Panhandle Conference player, switch hitter.
Chipola, people sleep on that program. Chipola is one of the top JUCOs in the country. Anytime you can pull anybody from Chipola, and that's around my neck of the woods because I live in Santa Rosa Beach, Destin area. So I'm very aware of what that team brings to the table. So anytime we can pull somebody from there, they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah, and I've always gotten some guys from there, and that was partially because their head coach is a UCF alum, Coach Jeff Johnson. He played here before me, played Coach Bergman, and he's always at least maybe not helped me get the guy, but told me the truth on what that guy really was. Sometimes you get some guys that oversell. If Coach Johnson's selling them to us, it's a real thing, and he was right on with Espinal. Couldn't ask for more. Eris Rivera, another catcher from Polk Community College, will come in and help us right away. And then on the pitching side, you've got Isaac Williams. What the ceiling is for that guy, I don't know. If he's going to be 97 to 100 when he rolls out there, he might be. Like, I've seen it so far. It's been pretty special. Dakota Stone from Jacksonville, another left-handed with power, which if you heard me speak earlier last week, we had really Dom Castellano and Cam Crane last year as our left-handed options. Now we got 5 or 6 guys that we feel comfortable with. But you can go down that list of junior college arms that we got: Angelo Smith to Carter Stanford to Kevin Shonaboon. And not just Florida JUCOs. There's Texas JUCOs. There's Stanford's from TCC, but he's from Alabama. The coaches did a really good job of just knowing where our holes were and where we could go get them before the transfer portal hit with those JUCO guys, and then be able to get Russell Sanderford from St. Leo. That's been great for us. And Cam Wicker from Wofford. Really just kind of gave us some other options. And then we picked up Matt Sauser, who I didn't get to coach at Florida State, but I did recruit him from the Midwest. That he's a starting type pitcher for us as well.
Yeah, you talk a lot about pitching depth, and pitching depth is huge, especially when you make long runs, especially during the tournament. We felt, I think, last year as fans that we had more depth than we normally would have, right? We usually have 1 or 2 weekend guys that we can consistently kind of, depend on. But last year we were expecting, I think, a little bit more out of the pitching staff. We had some good performers that came in the rotation. Obviously, injuries seem to hit us every year. But I feel like, just hearing you talk about the pitching, when you're a Power 4 program and you have expectations to make it into the regional, you really have to have some quality depth at the pitching staff. And it sounds like you guys really loaded up this year, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, we definitely tried to. And not just, everybody says pitching depth, but like, can guys start? Is there enough guys that can actually start? And if you're unsure, like, what is the role? We try to be specific on looking at the guy and like, yeah, he's good. That's the stuff that we know what the fast, but where does he fit in our guys? Or do we have 4 of that one already? Like, we got 4 of them, then are we really going to get to number 4? Can I get 3 other different looking guys that we can go get and create problems and match up problems for other guys? Because no matter what, if you line them up on a weekend in our league and everybody looks the same by Sunday, it's not going to play out really well. It's 100% for the hitters on the team. So, and we look at that. We got stuff, the analytical and the technology side of it when you're analyzing pitch types and shapes and release heights and all that stuff that boggles my mind from an interdisciplinary study major from UCF. But our pitching coach is really good at that. And I ask him, okay, tell me what that means. And I try to act like I don't know as much as I probably do, but and kind of just maybe those are guys we want to separate and not throw back-to-back days and kind of put somebody different in the middle and maybe not follow that guy up in the bullpen with that same type of guy. Even though it might be left-handed or right-handed, just kind of getting deep into that. And we found some matchups that were really good last year. Like, for whatever reason, Dom Castellano after Dom Stagliano seemed to be a really, really tough transition for most teams.
Yeah, and talk about that a little bit. We've still got some pretty solid upperclassmen that are part of the team. Lex got to come back this year. He's a big power hitter. You got Sonny D. He's back, and he's electric. We were excited about him as a freshman. Super tall guy, lots of power. Again, another guy that kind of got bit by the injury bug a little bit as during his career here, but somebody we're all excited about. And then Dom, you mentioned Dom coming back. And those guys, to me, I was listening to Lex, for example. There were some interviews that have come out, and you listen to them. He stayed, after a coaching change. And they just get it, or they seem to get it, at least from their interviews on embracing the culture. Like, talk a little bit about those guys that are going to be important for this year's team. They've got some experience in the post season, and who's really going to be the leaders that are going to, when we're down, in the 4th, 5th, 6th inning, who are those guys that are going to pick us up and carry us through?
Yeah, I think you look at that. The team kind of identified that, obviously, with our captains. But Lex isn't a vocal guy. That's not like the interview you're watching. That's not easy for him. He's kind of like that's not. He probably thought about that for days. Like before we had the Fan Fest, I told Wiley Hartley, I was like, "Hey, you're going to do the speaking, but I'm going to tell Lex that he is going to do it as well, and we'll wait till right before we tell him." He's not doing it, so we'll see how he handled it. But he doesn't like that. But what he does is show up every day and do everything at the highest level that he can, all of it. I mean, that guy was a scholar athlete of the month in the whole athletic department last year. When I got here, he was a 3.0 student. He just decided that he was going to do everything he needed to do better. And it's not easy for guys who played outfield come in and say, "Okay, coach, you need me to play first. I'll play first." And I even talked to him in the recruiting process as we're going through the portal, like, "Lex, you want to come back. I want you back. You're a big part of this. If there's outfielders available that can help us, what do you think about staying at first base?" He's like, "Coach, just get the best player. I will play wherever you want me to. I want to win." And I mean, for a 21-year-old kid to say that in his senior year. So he's settled in at first. We got a couple guys we thought could help us in the outfield to fill some holes and make us better. And part of that is because honestly, if Lex had told me, "Coach, I need to play left. I want to play left," and I had time to go find a first base, we might have went that route. But Lex, being the unselfish guy, we went out and got what we thought were the two best players to fit exactly what we needed. So that leadership of just the unselfishness, he cares about his teammates and he cares about winning. And I think the more you can push that through, and he's tough. And that's a football guy that played football in Ohio growing up. And
he's a big dude, not your traditional baseball player.
Yeah, and he run a good athlete, but he that toughness shows up every day. So you either match that or he's going to let you know about it just by the way he goes about it. But then in the infield, when Dylan King gets a chance to catch, him and Sonny are going to go back and forth, but I could see Dylan King at some point catching in every game, whether he started or he's finishing it. I just don't like to catch those guys all the time from day one. I just don't. It's really hard to make it all the way to June. Yeah, and the offensive stuff's going to wear down too. Now, at a certain point, you probably ride somebody at the end, but he's into it. He's an energy guy. Everybody on the team respects him and likes him. Two different things, but I think he gets both sides of that. And he's a high energy guy. Braden Calise is back in that infield. He's a spark plug. When we really were trying to find our identity as a team offensively and defensively last year, when we got into the league, him inserting himself, I said we inserted him, but he inserted himself by the way he went about it, the energy and all the stuff that he did at Kansas and kind of just took the position away. He brings that on the daily basis. So there's a handful of guys. And just knowing that Dom Castellano and Chris Sosnowski are down there in the bullpen, I think makes everybody feel better about what's going to happen later in the game. Just give us a chance, get it close, and somebody's coming out of there to help us.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about last season, that season finished up 37-21. We were 14-15 in conference. What did you learn about this team and the Big 12 and how we stack up as a conference member within the Big 12? Because the Big 12 has been known for good baseball for a long time. The ACC is known for good baseball. The SEC, excellent. And the Big 12 has been known for really, really good baseball. So what did you learn, and how do we stack up, do you feel like, in this conference?
Yeah. And it's an elite league, right? And you had those three teams that we just had. It didn't get worse. I promise you that. Like those Arizona State are elite, and Utah's really good. Like they're really good and they're well coached. And a guy that's coached in the SEC for a long time, that he knows what he's doing, and those teams will be well prepared. It's an elite league. And for us to stack up, like, can we compete in the league? Could we compete in the I thought we could. Did it take a lot? And the kids had to play their tail off night and night and be extremely tough and go about it. And the way they did, yes, I knew exactly what it was going to take. We had a little more depth. I think we got those injuries in that stretch where they all kind of came at once, with Wiley Hartley and Galvan and Sonny and Brait with his shoulder, where we had to move Brait to second, and Khalees ends up at third base because that's all we had. And those kids were so dang tough and just played through it. So I know we can compete in it. And we talked about it as a team the other day, like, we're ready to play. We're through that practice session. We're ready to play in a game. I'm not worried about that anymore. Now I'm talking about dominating play and playing our level of baseball that can compete with those elite teams in our league when they play their best. To take somebody's best shot and be on the other side of it. And we addressed that. I thought we addressed that with getting a little more physical, a little more athletic position player group, and then obviously just the depth and quality of the arms. And I mentioned in the press conference last week about our strength and conditioning program. Like, we have to recruit more athletic. We have to recruit more physical. But when you get them, you got to really use that stuff, or what are we doing? It works both ways. You also can't expect the strength coach to turn somebody who's not physical into somebody who's really physical. Like, when they recruited me, they could have gave me to the strength coach and told me to make me fast. It would have never have happened. Like, it's just not going, like, that's just not going to line up. So we got to be smart on that part of it. But HR has been outstanding, and our guys are really attached to him and what he's doing. And there's some belief in that. And it's fun to see.
If you had your druthers, would you say that you prefer playing more of a game plan that's, small ball type, or do you prefer power hitting when it comes to the offense?
Man, I'd love to just stand at home plate and watch the kids hit. That would be awesome. I just don't know if that lines up all the time. So, and especially when you're looking for guys that can defend at this level too. Like, how many of those guys are in college that can defend, base run, do it all, and hit home runs? They're probably not in school, or if they are, they're not there for very long. And I think in our system, when you get the athlete who can defend and they end up being good base runners, and we help them offensively and they grow into that dynamic offensive player, that's how you win college baseball games at the highest level consistently. I would love to sit and watch him just hand a guy a ball in the first inning and go pick it up from him after the game's over and let him throw 9 innings and not have to call a bunt or a steal. And that would be awesome. I just don't know if that's realistic.
Well, no. And, college baseball is a long season. I think people forget. And, if you've played any kind of sport, you've got times when you're really, really on it and times where you kind of slump a little bit. And that goes for hitting too. Nobody's perfect through an entire season. So having the ability to play small ball and have efficient base running and making sure that you get contact and get on base, that leads to runs consistently. And then when you've got those guys like Lex who can Lex flex and, and really bomb it out there, or Brait or any of those guys, that's putting that's the cherry on top. I think at the collegiate level, it's hard to have a team full of those guys that can do that all the time. But being able to, do the small things, do the little things, make sure you're good on your base running, understand when you need to send somebody home or when to hold up or when to take that chance on stealing, or doing all those little things that make a huge difference in tight games. That's a lot of that is coaching. A lot of that is figuring out and understanding and coaching those guys up. And I think we've done a pretty good job from the small ball aspect of it. But like you said, it's fun to see some of those bombs leave the park.
Yeah. And in our league, like you guys saw from our games, like, this is an elite pitching league, not just our guys, the guys we're facing. So at some point in time, somebody's going to be really good on the mound and they're going to be on it, and we just can't stand up there and hit. Like, are we just going to, all right, that guy wins tonight? Or are we going to try something else and have something else in our bag that we can go to when we can't hit the guy for a stretch, and then create some runs? And then maybe we get to somebody else that we can hit, and then the whole thing opens up. Or we could just stand at the plate and let that guy just.
Well, and we saw that in the second game, right? We saw that in the second game in the tournament, right, against FSU, right? So the first game, it was a really close game. Second game was a close game that kind of got away from us there at the end. But, you went to Tally for the regional. I know we kind of talked about this offline, but what was that like for you, considering you knew all of those kids, and going back to a place that you coached for a pretty good spell there?
Yeah, and obviously when I got there, we knew what the situation was in Tallahassee when I got there as a coach, and can we fix it? And can we fix it in a hurry? And you thought you could, and felt like we did a good job getting that team ready, and to watch those kids at the end of the year, but in 23 really play well at the very end, and then add the guys that we did. I knew that roster was going to be special. And you coach those kids. Everybody asks me, they're my kids. I coached them. Like, it doesn't change whether I leave or not. Like, those are still my kids, and the way I feel about them and the guys I recruited. And some of those guys on that roster last year, I recruited to 2 different places. I recruited them to Notre Dame, and when I left to go to Florida State, they came with us to Florida State. And then now, 12 months later, I'm in another dugout watching them play with my own kids, trying to fight for their lives. It was almost surreal. But that was how you felt until first pitch was thrown, and then it's all about how can I beat them. That's kind of what you're thinking. You're lost in that, and when it's over, I mean, my daughter's in the dugout as a back girl, and when we lost, like, she's crying, and I thought it was because that our team was not going to be together. She could care less about them anymore. She was all with our guys, and it's a unique experience that only our sport or college athletics can bring about something like that, because it would never happen in any other arena.
I can't remember the kid's name, but there was a very highly touted pitcher that pitched against us, and we kind of had him on the ropes there for a bit. And then it's one of those things where it really kind of showed it's a game of at bats. Like, you only get so many.
Let me tell you what it was. It was Jamie Arnold, and we were down 3 with the bases loaded in a 3-1 count with 1 out. Yeah.
I watched that. I was like,
and we swung at ball 4 and hit into a double play. Yeah. I still wake up in the middle of the night. So,
yeah, that really turned it around for him, because they were hyping him up the entire tournament, and we were doing pretty well against him, hitting pretty well against him, and then they were like, okay, is coach going to pull him, or is he going to leave him in? And it was kind of like one of those, we're going to leave him in for another couple of at bats before we pull him, and then the game turned. And
those elite guys, you're going to get one shot at them.
Yeah.
You get one shot at them. If you get 2, you're lucky. So you better figure it out when you get your one shot.
Yep. All right. So for this year, right, you're going into this season. What's different for year 2? What was different for you for year 2, and what you wanted to accomplish with these guys coming into this season? And what are your priorities for this year for this team? Like, what do you want to see out of them? Obviously, win. Everybody wants them to win, right? But what do you want to see for them to grow as a team from the beginning of the season until we get to the tournament?
Yeah, and this is to not take anything away from last year's team. Very proud of them. I'll remember that group for a long time. But we talked in one of our first meetings, like, we're all here. They signed up for this. We signed up for this. Everybody in that building on the first day is to elevate this thing and continue to elevate this thing. And we're here to be the group that does something for the first time. And there's a lot of firsts left for us as a baseball program. Somebody's going to go win the first Big 12 title. Somebody's going to win the first regional. Somebody's going to be the first team to get to Omaha. And we understand that's what we're doing. I told them that whatever goal they have, we're talented enough to put the goal on the board. I don't care what it is. Whatever you want to put up there, it's not about that. It's about what we're willing to do, and will we elevate this thing on a day-to-day basis in everything that we do. So I'm looking for just an elevated level of play. We talk about doing everything in our system that if it's not good enough to win in the ninth inning of game 3 of a super regional on the road somewhere with 8,000 people, then take it out. Like, that's not good enough. I want to see that. I saw it in stretches, didn't see enough consistency of it. And part of that was not the kids' fault. It was, we just didn't have enough depth, and the travel beat us up and some of the injury stuff. And I think we can clean that part up. We've already have. But there was also some level of play and stuff that they know we're capable of playing better in some stretches, and not 14 and 15 in the league's not good enough. That's plain and simple for us in our program. And the way we look at it, 14 and 15 in this league is not good enough.
So, one of you mentioned injuries quite a bit, and we mentioned it at the top too. There were a lot of injuries that we had to contend with last year, and something that happened under previous regimes. We seem to have a lot of pitchers that were, Tommy John every year. I mean, obviously, you're going to get that. You have to be careful with your roster management and your pitch counts and all of that other stuff. We didn't seem to have as much of that this year as we've had in years past. Was there anything different that you were doing? And, obviously with the depth that we have in the pitching rotation that you talked about earlier, are we going to be more aggressive with our pitch counts and keeping those counts down to kind of get those guys last a little bit longer?
Yeah, and that's a constant battle, right? So with Coach Thomas and our athletic trainer and now our strength coach involved in all three of it is just the daily workload. And one, can you prepare them for the workload that you think they're going to have? So can you actually prepare them that they're actually ready to do what you want them to do? And then these kids are perfectionists, and I'm happy that they are. But on the pitching side of it, you got to monitor the throwing that's not involved in the work too. So it's all of it, from the stuff they do before they get to the field to the stuff they do after they throw to the throwing that happens, how many days rest we give them. And I don't think we used the guy on back-to-back days, even Kyle Kramer, who would have pitched every day if I would have let him, until we got to the last 2 weeks of the season. Mm-hmm. We tried to be deliberate in that, and we might have lost a handful of games early that I didn't want to shoot the whole thing out just to try to win one of those when I felt like we had a chance to make a run at the end. Now with the depth, you don't really have to do that as much until you save in. And you'll look at some teams, they'll use 6 pitchers all year, 3 starters and 3 main relievers. Like that's, and in games they want to win, and the games they don't think they can win, they throw everybody else. And I got a tough time throwing away some games early when I think we have enough arms that I hate sending that message that we're not in this thing.
Well, and I think velo is a big part of it, right? A lot of people push for velo and how you train for that. Some of the band work that's done, some of the heavier balls, progressively heavier balls that they're throwing. And that puts a lot of pressure on the joints. So I think training and how you train and how you build that arm strength, how you build that velo.
I think part of that is like, how big is the kid actually? Like, is he ready to do some of that training? I think I saw, and being in the Midwest, you kind of saw less of that, because in the Midwest, you get a lot more multi-sport players. You get a lot more dual position guys that haven't just pitched their whole life. So they haven't trained to only pitch and locked in that, where they train their whole body and they physically catch up to where the arm probably should be. And then they start training the pitch, versus some of the guys in the state of Florida have been just pitching since they were 12 years old.
Gents, I feel like I've been when I get to talking to Coach Wally, I just lock in, and it's like having a great conversation with them. So I'm going to take a step back, and I'm going to let you guys say something here. What questions you have? Because I just get excited about this stuff, and I just go.
No, that's fine. I got some. Well, at least got one. Alan, you anything you want to start with? Or...
Oh, I think you're muted, buddy.
Okay, come on now.
Sorry. All right, my bad.
We're professionals.
Yeah, we're professionals. Semi, exactly. Coach, I was going to say, what do you notice? Like, we've seen now most of our athletic teams in year 2 of the Big 12, and some of them made better transitions than others. But what do you notice as like the biggest change going into year 2 in the Big 12? Do you feel as far as the roster, the recruiting, how different is it? Maybe the first year's a little bit of a shock, getting used to playing all these big teams here. What's it like in year 2? Do you feel like kind of just accustomed to the conference now, or what's the kind of general feel with the team?
Yeah, in general, and I think the team, at least the returners, are more comfortable about who we're playing, the style of play, what it's like. And I think, honestly, some of the guys thought it was going to be a bigger deal than it was in certain aspects, and didn't realize other aspects that it was a huge change. As far as, one that was the talent that much better, probably not. Was the depth of talent better? More than likely. Was the travel getting to some of those places, and the level of just the event of going to some of these other places versus some of the other places that they've played in the past. Like when you roll into TCU, or you roll into Oklahoma, or even like we went to Baylor, and just seeing like it was an event, and there was some stuff that comes along with that, and West Virginia, going to West Virginia and dealing with that, and dealing with real on the road tough environments where it's everyone in the stands,
West
maybe
Virginia's
a couple umpires.
Yeah,
and dealing with that too.
Yeah.
Like, there's some of that. And we went to Oklahoma, and I didn't think we handled it very well, the weather. And then we got to Kansas, and we played, and I've coached as cold as places you could been. And it was as cold as I've ever been on that Friday night at Kansas, and we couldn't have played more embarrassingly. And we made an adjustment on like our thought process on that. And some of our guys helped us on that part, and we came out and played as good as you could have played 12 hours later in a doubleheader, and we never thought about that again.
What that makes a lot of sense. What does it take? I actually asked this to Coach Dawkins once. What does it take to, when you're transitioning from a group of 5 to Power 4, what does it take to become a consistent winner in a league like a Big 12? Obviously, I know recruiting and all that, but like, I mean, and what's the kind of the timeline? I obviously have to kind of catch up in a lot of way, resources, but really, what does it take to become a consistent threat in a league that's been around with teams that have been, in this league for decades, if not more? What does it really take?
Yeah, I think it takes one, like we talk about elevating everything that you do to, we talk about unity, competitiveness, and focus in ours for the UCF. And the focus for us has to be at a national championship level, that everything that we do, all of it, from the way we feed them to now there's budgetary restraints and everything, but we got to do the best that we possibly can do. And because of this league, there is 7-8 teams in this league that's the only focus they have, is win a national championship. So if you're not attacking it at that level, then you can't really jump into that stuff. You just can't. You'll never catch them. And the consistency of that, and then you got to be able to maintain consistency of staff and the leaderships that are going on with this. My ability, or our ability, I'm so lucky to keep all of our assistants here. And that part, it's not easy. Like I've been to places where you're changing out assistant coaches after assistant coach, and it messes with one recruiting, but development and just the way the thing works. And that's probably step one. Some of the teams that you look at that weren't baseball powerhouses that became, like when I went to school, Virginia was not a baseball powerhouse. Vanderbilt was not a baseball powerhouse. But Coach Corbin went there, and Coach O'Connor went there, and most of that staff is it's very similar to this day, 20-something years later, and they've built consistent winning machines with that level of elevating everything they do and the focus that they go about it.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah, so you're talking about coaches, and it was something that I kind of saw when I was looking through the roster, which I was really excited to see, which was Danny Nearai is now on the staff. And, he had amazing college career across the board, as you well know, right? And I was wondering, how did it come up that he was interested in this type of role to transition to the coaching, or at least the data analysis and that type of role? Yeah. And how is that transition working out for both of you so far?
Yeah, I've known Danny since he was 14 years old. Extremely intelligent kid. Hardworking, conscious, like all of that stuff. Like you got a daughter, that's the guy that she brings home, you're gonna smile a lot. Like that's exactly what you want. And then we got to about halfway through the year, And he was playing well, and there was some pro interest for him as well. And he's like, Coach, like, I think I really want to do what you do. And we talked about how you get into it, how you want to do it. And you could see it. Like, he was kind of a coach on the field, and he wasn't just doing what we asked him. He wanted to know why and learn and teach. And he'd been doing that for years. And we got to the end of the year, and I was like, Danny, if you want to do this, we'll create a position that will get your foot in the door, and you'll start learning all of the things that you have to learn to take the next step, to be an actual Division I assistant baseball coach. But if you still want to play, like, I want you to just wait and exhaust the resources, see if this thing happens. And he did for a little bit. He's like, Coach, like, I'm serious. I was like, okay. And we created that position. And he's going to be a really great coach because it's important to him. All of the stuff, even the stuff that none of us wanted to do as a coach, but we all have to do it. And it's all part of learning that you have to take with you. He does it very well and at a high level, and he's going to be able to teach it. And the sky's the limit for Danny Neary as a coach one day.
Well, it sounds awful familiar to a certain Bergman to Coach Wally process there.
Very similar. Yeah, there was a little flashback there.
Josh?
That was the main thing. Actually, it's interesting. And talking about Coach Bergman, that is who I remember when I was going to school. He was there forever.
Josh is actually the oldest guy on the show. I may have all the gray hair, but he is the oldest guy.
A few years. Birthday's coming up soon, so it's a good one. Just curious, are you still in contact with Coach Bergman or family? Yeah. And is he like tangentially around UCF, but not maybe because of some other things, right? But is he still around? Are you still in contact with him?
Yeah, we talk regularly. He'll text or call anytime something happens. Like, he watches every game, so I'll get a text about something that happened or pre or post something that he saw. Or sometimes he knows, like, if it's not going good, he doesn't say a word. He just says, "Get him next time," or like, he's got a feel. He knows what he's doing. And then, I mean, he'll be back again. We're going to recognize on our alumni weekend against Houston on that Friday night. We're going to recognize the 95 team that won 29 straight games and NCAA tournament team. I just think it's important to get those guys back. And then actually my group of teams that I was lucky enough to be a part of, the 2000, the 2001, 2002 team, which is our only three-peat. We're going to do all of those guys that we can get back at one time on Saturday, all around the golf tournament, which is just try to get everybody back as much as we can for that weekend. But yeah, he's still kicking, and he's involved and watches everything that we do. And he came back last year for the Kansas State series, which was neat. He was there for that, so that was awesome.
So just curious. So Trey has a group chat where all of the teammates that he played with still talk. Ben Stout has this team chat where all the people, or most of the people from the teams, still talk. Do you do the same thing? Is this like a thing for every single college?
It is, but I have removed myself from all those because I don't need to hear all of that. But we have some individual stuff, and my teammates are good. They'll text me individually on some. I even removed myself when the coaching search was going on from the UCF baseball alumni Facebook thing because I couldn't read it. I can't do that. I don't have so much space in this brain. But yeah, those exist. And we actually started another one for the 95 team and the 2003 team. And Danny Neary is in charge of that because that's one of the things I gave him was the alumni really help us with the alumni. He's like, Coach, you won't believe the stuff that's coming in this text chain. I was like, yeah, I do. I know exactly what you're dealing with right now.
And that's why I'm no longer in it.
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome. Thanks, Coach.
It's funny too. Like you mentioned, Johnson up at Chipola, right? So that he was another name that's been floated for years about bringing him back to UCF. Is there any chance that he might come back and work with you at some point, or is that a foregone conclusion?
Coach and I have talked about that. He's not only the coach there now in Chipola, he's the athletic director.
Yeah.
So he's set up. I think he's probably there until he decides he's done with that part. And we had talked about, we'll see where that goes when he's complete with what he wants to do up there. I still think he's still got a lot of energy and doing a lot of great things. I don't know if he's even close to being done. So we'll see where that goes. But we've talked about that.
Awesome. Well, we are now 49 minutes in, and a large part of that is my fault because I enjoy this when we do this every year. But let me, we're going to kick off here with Siena coming up. They're back on the schedule. They were kind of off the schedule for there for a bit, although they were our traditional team that we start the season with. Do you want to mention anything about the first game? Is there anything that you want to share with the folks other than they need to be there to support the team? We've got a really, really good team this year. We had a really, really good team last year. So if you're not going to watch baseball at the John, I don't know what you're doing with your weekends, but you should.
What's better on Valentine's Day than coming to watch us play?
I can't think of anything.
Wait till my segment later when we see as many things that are going on in the UCF baseball world on Valentine's Day. It's baseball and a bunch of other stuff too. It's a lot.
Well, you're already going to be on campus so you get to pick your poison on and really, guys that are out there and gals that are out there, if you have a date that on Valentine's Day and you're a huge UCF fan, this is a great way to weed out those that are keepers and those that are not. I'm just going to put that out there. Every girlfriend that I've ever had has been to a UCF Valentine's Day event, whether it be basketball, baseball, or something else. So it's a great way to make sure if he or she is the one. So I'm just going to put that out there. It's
always an evaluation.
Absolutely. All right, Coach. Anything else that you want to say to Night Nation? We obviously wish you well. We're going to be supporting you. I'll be at times at the John. I'm up in North Florida, but I am a season ticket holder. So whether I'm there or I'm watching on ESPN, if I can't make the game, I'll be there to support. But anything else to say to Night Nation before we?
I appreciate everyone's support. Like being in the John. From the home side of it for the first time in a long time, I felt like our crowds made a difference. I know they could be even better. Like I thought that was an electric atmosphere, and opposing teams from the Big 12 talked about how that they didn't know exactly what they were getting into, and they didn't expect what they got when they showed up at our place. And I think that helped us out a lot at home, and it helps our guys too. And it's an exciting place, and I think we could have one of the most electric atmospheres in the Big 12. So just want to see all those people out there, and hopefully we'll give you something to be proud of.
There's no doubt about that in my mind. Thank you so much for joining us again this year. I know you've got a lot on your plate getting ready for the season. And for those of you that don't know, if anything else, if you don't enjoy baseball for whatever reason, which you should, go support Coach Wally. He is a UCF alum, bleeds black and gold, has been in there ride or die, whether it's at the opening of the bounce house or wherever he's been. He's always been one to support us. He's one of us. So make sure you support Coach Wally, and good luck this year. We'll be rooting for you, my friend.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right, charge on.
Thanks,
Wow. Always enjoy having Coach Wally on. Thank you, Coach. We'll catch up later on this season, and I think I've got him to give me an opportunity to get one of those cool Space U hats that I could never seem to get because I always miss it because they sell out. So I'm going to pay for it and support the team, and I'll even donate a little extra for that. But appreciate Coach Wallace, and we are very, very, very lucky to have him both to join us and just in general. That was a great interview. For those of you that missed it, go back and watch the whole thing because honestly, there were some great nuggets in there about the upcoming season and what we should expect. So with that being said, let's go ahead and pivot. All right. Believe it or not, we still have some football to talk about. And specifically, we've been talking a little bit about recruiting. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit of recruiting and 2025 commitments. Alan, take it away.
Yeah. So, obviously early signing day is the premier signing day, like Josh and I talked about last week. But there still is this second window here where you get a couple of stragglers that sign on. And, you're not going to get the biggest names in this period. Most players have signed to their respective teams at this point, but Scott Frost was still able to add 4 more players. And as we talked about last week, we had a very small class due to the coaching change with only 11 guys signed with all the decommitments and flips and whatnot. So to add 4 and bring it to a class of 15 looks a lot better on paper now with just the quantity. So we talked about 2 of those guys that signed prior to signing day, but then we got 2 guys actually on National Signing Day last week on Wednesday there. So the first one was a defensive tackle, Trenton Turner. He actually plays nearby at Lakeland High. He's a 2-star recruit, according to Rivals. Did not actually have any other FBS offers. UCF was his only offer. So clearly Scott Frost is maybe going diamond mining there, but played at Lakeland High. Looks to be like a developmental prospect, 6'2", 285 pounds. There's not even a lot of tape on him, but Frost, or I think it was one of the assistant coaches talked about, they felt he could be someone that really develops at UCF in the right hands and has a chance to be a really strong player. So we'll see. I think given that UCF had quite a few extra scholarship spots remaining, I don't think it's a bad thing to, try to get a prospect that, not a lot of other teams are looking at. Maybe he's a guy that in the right hands can really, really develop. So that's the first guy that we signed on sign day. And the second one was actually a fairly decent name. Someone that what was that?
A Hawaiian. We're back in Hawaii, baby.
Hawaiian Pipeline is returning, and it coincides.
Let's get some spam and cook it up for the quarterback barbecue.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, let's go.
All
Spam
about
and Reese's.
Pog. Just want some Pog. Oh, so good.
So yeah, we got the Hawaii Pipeline back. We're coinciding with Mackenzie Milton's return. We got a 3-star offensive lineman, Jacob Maeva. I don't know exactly how to say it, but this guy actually had a good amount of offers. When you talk about both FBS and FCS offers, had 3 other Power 5 offers. 6'2", 295 pounds, 3-star guy. So clearly Coach Frost is loading up on that offensive line, considering all of the guys that we lost due to graduation, due to transfer portal. That is now, if you're counting at home, 5 offensive linemen in the 15-person class. So a third of the class was offensive linemen. Then you also combine that with the 5 offensive linemen we got in the transfer portal. So we're going to have 10 new offensive linemen coming in. And I think that was a smart decision, just considering, not all of them work out, first of all. And second of all, we lost a ton of depth there. So Jacob here, looks to be the part. We've had some really good Hawaiian offensive linemen, and very recently, like Loki Paole. So we know that UCF does pretty well with Hawaiian players. So I think this was a really good kind of last second, 11th hour get for UCF, getting this guy. So overall, UCF finishes the class with 15 players and actually moved up a couple spots in the overall ranking. It wasn't good, at least on paper, the number, but did move up a spot with the 4 kind of 11th hour gets. So that's our 2025 signing day recap.
Yeah, I mean, a big piece of this, and Coach Frost talked about this when he had an interview with Mark Daniels, and we'll talk a little bit more about it a little bit later, but I did want to mention this. He mentioned that, when he got here, we had, I think it was like 51 players that were left on the roster out of an 85 scholarship cap, right? He had a lot of work to do, and Mark and Terry Mahajer mentioned this in his interview, which we'll talk about later, and so did Scott Frost. He had to get back into this. People forget he got out of coaching before all of this NIL stuff came to fruition. And Coach also mentioned that unlike most situations, he didn't have a coaching staff, because this all just kind of came out of the blue for him. He didn't have a coaching staff and ergo recruiting staff ready to go. So, for him, there was a lot of learning that had to happen. There was a lot of relationships that had to be rebuilt or built. And, it's kind of hard to get that, spun up that quickly. That being said, he also said, hey, right now, they're focused on spring ball. That'll allow them to get back into, putting his coaching hat on. But they will go back out for that second signing day and go and try to get some more folks because they need depth. That's one of the most important things. And what we've learned, both from Gus and from Scott, has been, hey, you've got to recruit your own players that you have to keep them first. That's number one. Then you've got to go recruit your transfer players, and then you've got to go recruit your high school guys. So that's a tall task to ask of anyone, especially without a coaching staff. You're trying to put a coaching staff together, et cetera. But the other thing about it is that people need to remember that the style of football that we're going to be playing under Coach Ross, it may not be, and he's been very specific about this, we're not going to see 2017 again, but from what we've heard from the offensive linemen specifically, that style of guy who can, not just play smash mouth football, but move the line of scrimmage to that second level. That's the style of guy which requires a more athletic type of lineman, and you're seeing more and more of that start to happen. You mentioned Jacob Maeva. Jacob is part of that Polynesian person. He is of Polynesian descent. And if you look at BYU, look no further than our own conference, their linemen, what we've done in the past with our linemen, what Navy has done with their linemen, that Polynesian group make a lot of, and if you watch the Super Bowl or any of the Superb Owl, as I learned last week, there's a lot of linemen that come from Hawaii. So I'm very happy to see us get back in there. I do think KZ being a part of the group is going to help us there as well. The more of those guys that we can get, the better, because they turn out at a pretty high rate. And most of them are 3 stars. There's not a whole lot of 4-star linemen that come out of the islands, but those that come in, they develop. Yeah, they develop really, really, really well. Let's go ahead and pivot again. Pivot. All right, let's talk a little bit of football schedule. I know you guys were kind of talking about it last week, but the official came out this week. Terry Mahajer talked a little bit about that as well this week. The Big 12, one of their priorities was not to have back-to-back away games. We did not get that. We don't leave the state of Florida for a while. We do have an early bye week and then a much later bye week. So there's going to be about 9 weeks in between there. Terry Mahajer was not happy. Well, one, Oklahoma State can't be too happy because they've got to come back to our place again, and they have not done well in any sport versus UCF. One of my producers there and co-hosts for the Big 12 Huddle is a big OSU fan, and they cannot be happy about that. But let's run through the schedule real quick, Alan. If you just kind of want to take us through the schedule, and let's talk about some of these games and how we feel about them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we knew who the opponents were. We just didn't know the order, the dates, what would be the space game, things like that. So no surprise here. Starting off, we have basically, in 3 of our first 4 weeks, we have our non-conference schedule, which historically has been the case. UCF usually plays their non-conference schedule first. Like last year is a little different. We played Colorado, then we played Florida, but this year it's back to the traditional model. So we start off on Thursday, our only weekday game. As of now, there could be one change there, but as of now, our only weekday game is the opener against Jacksonville State at home, which is on a Thursday, August 28th. So, our annual FCS game, or excuse me, that's not the FCS game. That's our G5 game, our annual G5 game. Then week 2, going back on a Saturday, once again at home against North Carolina A&T, which is our North Carolina A&T, the Aggies. The Ags.
They bring in their band.
Sorry, I had to.
Yeah, well, they're our annual FCS game. So that, and then haven't seen this, I don't think ever. week 3 is a bye for UCF.
Yeah.
So right after 2 weeks, don't love the timing of that bye. I think it's a little too early. I would rather have it a little later on, but that is the first bye week, which will be basically week 3. So essentially we will learn absolutely nothing about our team after 2 weeks and then go into a bye. And coming out of the bye, we have our first real big test. We finally get the UNC game after hurricane cancellations. And this and that and this.
Don't mention the H word. Yeah, don't mention the H word.
I do not actually. I probably just jinxed. We're never playing UNC.
Yeah,
sorry guys.
Yeah. It's like the guys who talk about like the basketball players who are like, yes, they make every single free throw and then they shoot it and doink.
Yep. Yeah. Well, tentatively, UNC is coming into town week 4, which again at home. So UCF starts off the season with 3 straight home games, and UNC that first big test. Week 4.
Not only is it not only do we get them at home, but we get the hoodie at home.
Oh yeah, Bill Belichick against Frost.
Bill Belichick will be in the bounce house. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, if they are undefeated and we are undefeated, that could be a game day type of game. Just because I think they're going to find a follow on Belichick for a while. Honestly, I wouldn't say it's going to be like Sanders, but it might be close depending on how they do.
He'll get a lot of coverage. I think. I don't know if that's a game day type of game though.
I don't know, man. I mean, you got Scott Frost who's coming back.
It's a good story.
Yeah, and we better. All I can say is, Josh said if we're undefeated. If we're not undefeated, we have Bill State and North Carolina AT and the bye.
I think are
better. Yeah,
their first 2 games are they're playing TCU
and Charlotte.
And
Richmond.
They have Clemson on the 4th, but I think that we're before that. So
listen, TCU. Here's a bold prediction, or
it's in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, too early prediction here. TCU is going to be a problem this upcoming year. They were kind of back and forth. They lost a lot of close games last year. Their defense let them down, but they had a good offense. They're bringing a lot of people back. I expect TCU to be a good team this year. I'm not sure if UNC is going to be undefeated coming into the bounce house, but I don't think it matters. Having Bill Belichick anywhere, there's going to be a spotlight depending on what other games are that weekend, and it's early enough that there may not be. Hold on. Tim says, guys, do not plan on being 2-0 before UNC. Get past Jacksonville State first, as they will set the tone.
I'm with you.
And I'm going to plan on being 2-0.
But,
all I'm going to say is I'm planning on being 2-0, Tim. And I know you never count your chickens before they hatch. Every given Saturday or Thursday in this case,
there's no excuse.
There's no excuse. If Coach Frost lays an egg against Jacksonville State, I'm sorry. That pretends a much bigger problem for the rest of the season. So I'm going to count my 2-0s. We may go 2-1 with a loss to the bye, but I definitely think we win.
And Jacksonville State is a recent FBS school. They just became one recently, so we're kind of playing 2 FCS teams.
I think Tim said too, they were good last year, but if we are that bad that early, I don't know, Tim. Like I appreciate it. The bad news, UCF fan. I'm not predicting we're going to go undefeated next year. I mean, Coach Frost was adamant about saying, "Don't expect us to go 13-0."
Obviously, we're not. But those two.
But I mean,
all I'm saying is that Jordan Hudson, Bill Belichick's girlfriend, could probably coach us, and we should be 2-0. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, we should be 2-0.
Is she legally the age limit to be able to coach us? I'm just saying
24. So I mean, I think there's
some sort of NCAA rule against that or something.
Maybe. The rule, yes. UNC. We'll see what happens with TCU. They're going to beat Richmond and Charlotte. They should again. But yeah, that I feel like that's going back to the schedule. I feel like that's going to be it's going to be a litmus test for a couple of reasons. One, who knows what the heck is going on at UNC? They're getting some good recruits. You have a lot of name. There's money there. And who knows what we have, right? Like we have a lot of new faces. We have a lot of cohesion that's going to happen between now and September. Really August.
Our biggest question is quarterback. We still have no idea who's going to be a quarterback. Coach Frost brought in a quarterback that he has a lot of confidence in, and you've got Dylan Risk that's coming back. Dylan Risk will be the one giving the quarterback barbecue. But I don't know. I mean, we've got to figure out a lot at the QB position. We got Miles Montgomery coming back for a running back. We've got we've got some attrition at linemen, and we're putting in a new system, so it could be really sloppy. But I think with Belichick, it's going to be interesting to see. If there's one thing about Bill Belichick is he's going to be prepared, and he's going to try to have his team prepared, right? So the question is who's going to be more in sync at that point? Is it going to be UCF or is it going to be UNC? And can they out talent us on the field? That's the big question. And do you believe in Grinch? That's the other thing. There's some folks that went to there was a shareholder meet and greet with Scott Frost and Grinch and a lot of the coaches. One thing that he said there, and this harkens back to Coach Frost's first tenure. Our defense is going to be complementary to the offense, and you've heard Trey talk about this ad nauseum, right? Our defense, if you looked at the number of plays as far as defensive efficiency was concerned when Coach Chins was here, when he was here, right, defensive efficiency, our defense was actually pretty darn good. They just were on the field for so many snaps that when you look at the national statistics, they weren't that great. So Grinch mentioned at this event that you can't always evaluate defenses based on pure statistics versus everyone else because they don't play in the same field, right? They may have a different strategy. So it'll be really, really interesting. But I think between the quarterback situation is going to be a big question. I think we're going to be okay at running back. The line is going to be a big question to see how fast they gel. And then implementing a new system, whatever that system is going to be, whether it be a hybrid or whatever it is going to be, as I don't think we'll have the 2017 system. I think that's going to be the key to that UNC game because the hoodie will have them prepared. And I think from a college perspective, I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't do a lot of play a little like TCU did last year where they were attacking the zone, right? So if we play a zone or we don't get pressure, it may be a long day for us. But we did get some of our linemen to come back this year, so that is a strength. Between John Walker being back, between our Miami transfer, number 11, I can't remember.
Nigel Kelly.
Yeah, Nigel Kelly being back. I think that we do have some opportunity there. And to Tim's point, the special teams play will be important. It showed its ugly head last year, but I will say this. We got one of the best special teams coordinators in the entire country. So I expect that position group to elevate quite a bit. No more, hey, I'm catching the ball at the 1 yard line and then running back into the back of the field, or I'm catching the ball in the end zone and then bringing it out, and none of this confusion. So expect that to be more of a strength than what it has been in years past.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So continuing on here, after the hoodie game, we go and have our first road test at Kansas State. So similar to our very first year in the Big 12, our first conference game is on the road against Kansas State. So maybe get a little
better one.
Maybe.
I don't like that matchup, dude.
I do not like that. That feels very loss-ish.
Loss-ish?
Yeah.
Is that an official football term now?
Correct.
Loss-ish?
Yeah, I just put it in the dictionary actually a couple days ago.
It's more like we need to have a lozenge. But that being said, I don't like that because it's away.
No.
K-State, Bill Schneider Family Stadium is a tough place to play, and they've got a quarterback who's coming into their own right now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're always tough.
Always,
They are, but their quarterback last year, we played him the year before. And what he did to us then was phenomenal. And then, watching him last year, I think this is going to be his year to shine. So I think that's just a car crash waiting to happen.
Probably.
You'll be wrong.
All right. So then after that, we come back home and we play the other team from Kansas, Kansas Jayhawks, at home. So that will be the first Big 12 home game of the year. That's in first Saturday in October. Then we play our old friends on the road, Cincy at Nippert Stadium, or Cindy as they're called sometimes, on the road there, looking for a little revenge from last season.
Now hold on, I beat them in NCAA 2025. 63-0. So we're guaranteed a win versus Cincinnati next year. Scott Satterfield has kind of been on. They started a little hot and kind of have been on a decline. So I expect us to whoop Cincinnati. All right, keep going.
So Roger is calling it now. He's guaranteeing a win. So if we don't,
100%.
We're blaming Roger. Okay.
You know what? I might actually be there for that game. As you guys know, my dad's side of the family is from Cincinnati. So if anything, I'm going to pull the anti-Josh and make sure that we win that game.
All right. I like it. All right. So then we come back home for homecoming against West Virginia. Folks, we no longer have homecomings against the Temples and the Marshalls of the world. We have West Virginia, who, as we know, is 2-0 against us since joining the Big 12. So we have them in Orlando on homecoming. That is not an easy homecoming.
Yeah, with Rich Rod.
Yeah, two returned sons to Frost and Rich Rod in the I don't want to call it the second stint coach battle, I guess. Then after that, we get our second bye, which is basically in week 8 at the end of October there. Coming off the bye, we go back on the road and we face Baylor, which, we haven't faced them since our epic collapse 2 years ago. This will be our first time ever playing in Waco against Baylor. So we know the official matchup is 1-1. We beat them obviously in the Fiesta Bowl back in 2013. So we got Baylor. That's not an easy road game either by any means.
You know what though? This should prepare the guys for our home environment of the future because we're modeling our tower after Baylor. So I'm just saying.
Little prep there, yeah. Then the following week, once again, we play a previous AAC foe in Houston. Didn't get them last year, so they're back on the slate there at home. That should be a winnable home game against Houston.
It's the space game. We always play well in the space game.
I was just going to say that is our annual space game. Strategic, smart move by UCF. I like it. We're undefeated. Play probably our easiest conference game of the year against Houston in the space game against another team that has space connections. So that should be a cool game. And as we know, we are perfect 8-0 in space games. So hopefully we'll make it 9-0. Frost can't ruin that in his first year back. Then finishing up the final 3 weeks of the season, we go back on the road and we play Texas Tech in Lubbock, which we did play them there our first year in the Big 12 and obviously lost a real close game there after kind of holding the lead for most of that game and then blew it there at the end. So get another shot at Texas Tech. Then we come back home. What was that?
We couged it.
We couged it. Then we come back home and get a rematch against Oklahoma State, who we slaughtered the first time we played them as conference mates, 45-3. So I would assume they will have revenge on their mind. But as we all know, Oklahoma surprisingly went winless this year in the conference. So we don't know what to expect from them. I could see them being horrible. I could see them being great. That's the crazy thing about the Big 12. Just because they were winless last year, who knows? Oklahoma State could be at the top of the conference next year. Then we finished the season with a lot of people are not happy about. This kind of become a controversy point on the schedule. Probably the coolest road game, and just in terms of area and, Provo, Utah, beautiful area. We played BYU, who obviously was a top 10 team for a lot of the year last year. And who knows? I don't know. They do return their quarterback. We play them on the right now it's on Saturday, but it could be Black Friday, basically Thanksgiving weekend, which makes it very, very hard for a lot of people to travel, especially across the country, when prices will be insane. But we do play BYU in the final game of the season in Provo.
Yeah, that's tough for me too, because I actually have a place to stay out there now. As you guys know, I was out there a couple of weeks ago in Utah, in Salt Lake City, home of the Utes. I was right up the street from them, so I was excited about going to this game. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it because of the Thanksgiving, obviously. But I'm going to try. So I'm going to have a cougar tail, because I have not had a cougar tail. I wanted to have a ski shot this year because I thought we'd be going to the Utes game as well. But that's apparently not going to happen. But I am going to try to make it for that game. So I'm going to anti-Josh us again. We'll win. So
the thing is, I also have a client in Utah, in Salt Lake City, and I was going to try to plan another double dip. I've done it multiple years. It's been great. And no, I don't think I could do it either, but we'll see.
All right.
Now that I know of a place to stay, that's great.
All right. Well,
I have some other notes on the schedule if you want me to run through them real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, cool. So just some stuff I kind of wrote down when I was doing a post on my page. Some of you guys may have seen it, but so as far as the schedule, UCF avoids 3 of the top 5 finishers from last year's schedule, including number 1 Arizona State and number 2 Iowa State, as far as where they finished in the Big 12. So do avoid some of the top teams. Excuse me. Overall, we have 7 home games this year, but in conference, we only have 4 home games with 5 away games, which, as you know, that flips every single year. So the following season, we will have 5 conference home games. The road schedule definitely is a lot tougher than the home schedule, I would say, in my opinion, at least, with 4 of the 5 road opponents finishing with a winning record in the Big 12 last year. So definitely a tough road schedule. The home schedule, by comparison, is a little bit easier if we use records as a gauge. All 4 of our Big 12 home opponents finished with losing records in 2024. So a little bit easier. As far as road, we only have 1 West Coast trip, which is obviously BYU. The first half of the year is very, very home heavy, with 5 of our first 7 games at the Bounce House. So after that, it gets a little bit more road heavy, but other than the first 3 games of the year, UCF basically alternates home and away. So there's no 2 consecutive road games or no 2 consecutive home games after that first 3-game stretch of the season. So it's going to be home, away, basically, to finish the season. For the 3rd year in a row, we will play Cincy and West Virginia again, which are the only 2 programs UCF has faced each year as a Big 12 team. Other than that, the only
I'm fine with, because they're East Coast.
Agreed. I like that there's some consistency playing Cincy, especially Cincy and of course West Virginia too. Other than that, though, the only common opponent from last year in this upcoming season is BYU. So we essentially play a brand new schedule for the 3rd year in a row. Now, this year, obviously, we've played all these teams. Now there's no new teams, but Cincinnati, West Virginia, and BYU are the only teams from last year's schedule. So 6 out of the 9 conference opponents we did not face last year, but we did obviously face in year 1. As of now, like I said, there's only 1 weekday game. That obviously may change with BYU. And then as far as some new stuff, Kansas makes its first ever trip to Orlando, the first time we've ever hosted the Jayhawks. And then on the road, Baylor, which I mentioned, it's our first ever trip there. So those are just some little other schedule tidbits I came up with.
All right, awesome. And we do have a little bit more football to talk about. Some of it's UCF related, some of it's not. But we do, and you know how I hate using the word but, we do have to talk about something called UCF hoops. Okay. Folks, I am off the bandwagon.
Yeah.
I hate to say that. Here's the thing. Johnny Dawkins has been someone who's had us believing and then kind of has this like skid midway through the season and then finishes strong enough to get to the NIT and maybe make some noise and then lose against the Cows, right? We had this conversation going with Ben. Ben, obviously, our hoops analyst and former UCF basketball player who couldn't make it tonight. But I don't know. What I've seen from this team the last 2 games just makes me feel like they don't have it. And Ben's comment was, to him, it looks like this team is gearing up for next season and where they're going to go. His comment was they're looking for their own stats and not playing as a team. And one of the problems we've had offensively over the years under Johnny Dawkins is a lot of ISO ball. And so now it feels like from Ben's perspective that the motivation is that for the ISO ball is folks gearing up for next season. So his comment was, and I'm bringing this up, the only person he wants back from this team is Jim. Everybody else.
Ben said that? He only wants
Ben did say that. Yeah. So if Ben's seeing that, and he's one of the most ardent supporters of Johnny Dawkins, he's feeling what I'm feeling, which is this may be the slide. And in a way, it's kind of unfortunate for Johnny Dawkins. We all said that we didn't want a contract extension past 2 years. Terry Mahajer seemed to have, basically went along with that, which is good. I wanted Johnny to succeed this year. This team looked like it was a lot of fun. We talked about it all season, how it's been fun to watch UCF basketball, how we've been in every game. But I don't know what it is, but it just feels like the last 2 games, this team is just kind of like given up. And I don't know. We could talk about the details. It really doesn't matter at this point. This Baylor loss, 91-76. This team can, this team defensively has just been absolutely atrocious. And part of it is the skill players. Part of it has been, the front court has been lax. And then outside of Chiem, Rokas Josias just has not been able to fill in as the big. And I don't know if this team is feeling its limitations or what it is. This is the same team that beat Texas Tech. This is the same team that had quad 1 wins, but they've basically played themselves out of the bubble. Now, do they still have the opportunity in front of them to be able to get back in the bubble and make the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I think there's still a chance.
Yeah,
100%.
They need to win tomorrow. I mean,
they need more than that. They need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps and start playing some defense.
That's true.
That being said, I just don't have a whole lot of confidence in this team to be able to do it themselves. And unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of confidence in Johnny Dawkins to be able to make this happen for the team, because I keep seeing that. Ben was mentioning, when you watch other teams, they play team ball, they pass the ball. We do that at times. Yeah. And we have taken a step forward offensively. We just have not done anything defensively the last 5 or 6 games that makes me say this is a tournament contending and tournament game winning team. So I know I'm kind of going out on a limb. It's still early. We can still get back into it, etc. I just don't see the heart. I don't see the desire, and I don't see the talent operating at the level that it can and has showed that it can consistently for us to make a tournament run. So I don't think NIT is good enough. I don't think Terry Mohajir will continue this process. And we all love Johnny. He's a great person. I'm just calling it now, and I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna put it out there. I hope I am wrong. But I think this is the nail in the coffin as far as what this team can do for this season. So I'm going to take a step back from the mic. I've got on my soapbox. What do you guys think? What's the future for this team? The individual games really don't matter at this point. 13-10, 4-8 in conference. This team could have very easily been 8-4 in conference. What do you guys think?
I've been to a lot of those games, and
I know you're the reason we lost.
It's everything you're saying. And there's been some close calls, right? There's been some pretty close calls for Colorado and a few other things. But there's been some close calls, and we've always been in the can't get over the hump versus 20, ranked teams. That was most of the issues. Okay, got that. I honestly think the Kansas game was the straw that broke the camel's back. But after that,
but they showed fight after that.
Some, it's Cincinnati was a problem, and
Cincinnati was a big problem. There's no way on God's green earth we should have lost that game.
Absolutely, 100%. And we've lost 5 in a row now to them, and we shouldn't have. And so that's Baylor on the road. I can see that they're a good team. They're slowly getting people back, but we can't lose these games at this point. We just can't. We've lost too many of them. And
well, hold on. Look what Tim says. Tim says if the team gets to 18 wins, Dawkins stays. Do you guys agree with that?
I don't know. Truth be told, I think it depends on what happens in the second half and what happens in the tournament. If we actually make an actual run, sure. I just lost confidence. I don't see this happening, and we're the easier part of the schedule. And I hate to say it, but I think the team itself has lost mojo, juice, riz, whatever term you want to use. It's just not like it was, and I do think Kansas is what really kind of broke some of that. Because it's been over and over again.
Let me say this about that, right? So as the UCF's losses have been when we've shot sub 20% 3-pointers.
Yeah,
right?
Poorly, yeah.
And
absolutely.
we've done that a few times. We did that. We shot 22% against Cincinnati. And but then you've got Baylor and you shoot 40% from 3. 40%. There's no excuse for a 91-76, especially because Baylor got into foul trouble early. Yeah. There's no reason that we should have lost that game 91-76. And this team, they were winning. They were, all the way right before the half. It was at like 6-7 minutes before the half. The bottom fell out and it just kept falling.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going on mentally, but it appears mentally that this team has given up. And so I think they have the talent to win. I don't know if 18 games does it, because Terry Mohajir said that, basically through the contract that, that Johnny Dawkins was on thin ice one way or the other. It was not a vote of confidence to put him in there. And he did exactly what I was expecting and wanting him to do, which was to get us through the Big 12 transition. And then Johnny Dawkins, and I've said this from the very beginning, I've said this 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Johnny, if you watch Nightline, Johnny Dawkins is not the guy that's going to keep us in contention consistently. As much as I would love for him to be the guy, because I love him as a person. I've met with him personally. I've met his wife. They're great people. He's just not the guy. And I think Terry Mohajir, he's getting ready to have some money in his pocket because we are getting ready to put some money back into basketball. And then we'll talk about Terry's interview after this. But one of the things he talked about was the fact that we are going to put some more money into basketball. We won't, now the vast majority of it will go into football, but we will spend money, I think, on a head coach. And unfortunately, Johnny Dawkins, I don't think whether it's 18 games or not, I think he's been told, dude, it's turning or bust, and I don't think he's going to make it. Alan, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know what it is, what the win number is if Johnny Dawkins stays or not. I agree with you that he's probably on thin ice. It does kind of feel like it is turning or bust, fair or not. It's funny. Josh and I sat on this podcast last week and talked about, because like Roger, you just said the talent is there. And it does feel like the talent is there. You think about, you go back to recent losses. Houston, we were a couple seconds away from winning. We lose by 1 point. Kansas, on the road, we lose by 4 points. BYU, we're winning most of that game. We lose by 6 points.
And this is without Sellers.
And this is without Sellers. And then, obviously the last 2 games were ugly. We lose by double digits to both Cincinnati and Baylor. But it felt like those games broke us, the BYU, the Kansas, the Houston. We were in these games where it felt like, holy crap, like UCF, we could have beaten Arizona on the road. We could have beaten Houston. We could have beaten Kansas on the road. We could have beat BYU. I mean, think about how different we're talking right now with those 4 wins. We're like a surefire tournament team. We're praising Johnny Dawkins, and just, a couple bounces that don't go our way, really nuked the season. And now you see what happened with the Cincy and Baylor game, where the defense looks atrocious. We look all out of sorts throughout all phases of the game, really. To me, everything was in place. Even without Sellers, the talent was there. Like I just said, I mean, you're talking about 3 games that were all determined by one or 2 possessions that we could have won, and big games against ranked teams that would have been huge for our program and for our strength of schedule and quad 1 wins and all that type of stuff, that we would have basically been a tournament team. So it's disappointing. And now the wheels have fallen off. I mean, the question, like you said, can we still get to the tournament? Yeah. No, I don't think we're going to. It just feels like with 4 straight losses, we've lost 6 of our last 7 games. And it just doesn't feel like the team is there, like whether they've mentally given up. Like you said, Roger, the defense is a mess right now. There's a lot of issues. For me, the Dawkins argument, I was always kind of against him.
You were a hater. You were a hater.
No, I was.
Thread. You were a hater.
But where I've changed my tune as even last year is I felt, well, I won't say I changed my tune. Here's what I say with Dawkins. I don't think that there's necessarily a coach that can come in and just change UCF basketball's fortunes. Let's be honest. UCF basketball as a whole, historically, is not a good program. At least relevant relative to our other sports in general. It's not. This is a team that's been
hold on a sec. Let me respond to that, because you said, right? So I disagree with that. Every time our basketball program, we've moved up within conferences, we have been in contention for the championship. And we were in, once we got past, what was it? What was the Sun Conference or Atlantic Sun or whatever? A-Sun Conference, right? Once we got past that, we were in 1 to 2 bid leagues. And so we were in a league, for example, in the American, with Cincinnati,
Memphis.
Memphis,
UConn.
right? UConn, right? And that was a 1-bid league, maybe a 2-bid league.
Right.
But we were always in contention. Always. Even with our friend who is now the head coach of Stetson, right? Donnie Jones. You know, yeah, exactly. We were in contention. The thing with Johnny Dawkins that I'll say is this. Outside of the year where he had his son here and he had Taco Fall, we made the tournament. We had that game against Duke, which was phenomenal and sad at the same time. I don't know how that ball didn't go in. I mean, I'm still angry about that, right?
Don't remind me.
But I never felt that Johnny Dawkins was going to get us over the hump. Tim says here, if anything gets him fired, it was the 51-point home loss to Kansas. I disagree. I think if Johnny Dawkins gets us to the tournament this year, that doesn't matter. Even the national media had basically chalked that up to a loss as a outlier, right? But what has happened in the last 3 to 4 weeks to this UCF basketball team, not just with the close losses, and I will argue that the difference with the number of close losses that we had was coaching. Kelvin Sampson wins how many of those games?
Yeah.
Seriously. I'd say he at least splits them 50-50, right? So I would argue that the 51-point loss, yeah, it sucked. It was the worst, tied for the worst in program history. And yes, that will be enough to fire him. But was it enough to fire him for UCF's basketball program? No. Had he continued on, I would even argue if it would have been close with some of these recent matchups, I think he would have still had enough to be able to hang on. I don't think that he does the way that this team is trending. And unfortunately, unlike last year's where we had the last several years where we had that late bounce, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, but my point is I just don't know. My personal opinion, I understand you disagree. I just don't think UCF basketball as a program is that good. I know there's been teams in years, obviously some of Ben's teams and some like the year that we had, like you said, Aubrey Dawkins, where they've been good. I just don't think it's a good program. I know we're in 1 to 2 bid leagues, but I disagree on them always being contention. I think the closest we've ever been even to a conference championship game post ASUN was 3rd or 4th. I think the year that we had BJ and Aubrey, we were in 4th place in the American. I think that's literally the highest we've ever been. We've never really, in my mind, I don't think 4th is that close. So I don't think we've actually ever really been in true contention where
it's better than 12th. Dude, like, let's be real. Like, when it came to Memphis, like the bugaboos were Memphis and UConn, which were outsized, and Cincinnati, right? Which were, we could argue Memphis, Cincinnati, UConn were basketball blue bloods for a very long time. UConn is still
a basketball blue blood.
Well, it's exactly right. UConn is still a basketball blue blood.
Yep.
Memphis is kind of considered that. If they were in anything but the American, I would argue that they are contending for national championships. And I think Penny Hardaway isn't doing them any favors either, but that's beside the point. But I would say that those three, I think we were always in contention or close playing those games. And Tim makes a point too. He says the Big 12 is a BB conference, a basketball conference, lots of historic blue bloods, KU, KSU, OSU, Cincy, and Houston. And that is exactly my point and why I think that we need someone better than Johnny Dawkins at the helm, because he has not shown consistently that he can coach this team to wins. And we've had the talent. We haven't had the coach.
Maybe there is like, I guess my whole point that let me bring it home was that I feel that yes, we probably do need a new coach, and there's probably someone out there that can be better than Johnny Dawkins and win some of these close games. I just don't know if there's going to be this magical coach out there that gets us in conference contention in the Big 12, because I haven't seen it in previous easier conferences. And I don't know, I think it's significantly harder now in this conference to ever be a team that could be even consistently top 6. I just don't know and now maybe with the more dedication to resources, maybe it's more of a possibility, but I just think given UCF basketball's track record, I don't know there's someone that could be better than Dawkins. I just think that gap is not going to be so significant where we're going to be like, oh, wow, like this is what we needed all along. That's just what I think, unless we start pouring money in there.
Do we need that, though? I mean, let's look at West Virginia, for example, or if you start looking at the rest of the conferences as far as what the amount of money that they're pouring into their programs. Do we need that? No, we just need a coach.
All right, well,
Huggy Bear. Think about Huggy Bear at West Virginia. He's dying for the UCF job. I mean, I know he's a drunkard and allegedly, to use your favorite word, Josh, as you said 16 times last week, allegedly, right? But you get one of these coaches in here and bring them in. The talent in Central Florida is there. Johnny Dawkins, I would argue, has been able to bring guys like Chim in here. We put a little bit of money into the program. The Big 12 actually, to me, makes it easier because the number of
teams
opportunities that you have to get to the NCAA tournament, you only have to finish top 8, really.
That's a good point.
In the tournament, and the cachet that comes with it. The fact that Johnny was able to bring the roster in that he was in with a program like UCF, I think argues the point and goes to the point that, hey, the fact that we have, to Tim's point, Kansas, KSU, OSU, Cincy, Houston, even TCU, or Baylor, they were champions recently too in this conference. I think that is an advantage if we get a halfway decent coach that can coach on the floor.
Yeah, I those are all very valid points. I guess I just feel I've said this forever about UCF basketball, literally forever. I just don't have a lot of faith in them as a program where I don't feel like a coach is a fix. Whereas UCF football, I absolutely think a coach makes the world of a difference and can be someone that gets you to immediate conference contention, whether it's Frost or whomever it is. Basketball, but you make a good point. You have a lot more room for error. It could be top 8 and you still make it. I don't know. I guess I don't know the number they're going to start putting in there, and maybe you don't have to pour it in like Kansas does or Kentucky or someone like that. But I don't know. I guess until I just see something that gives me a little bit more faith. I mean, how many times have we ever had a super exciting basketball season? It's been 1, 2 since I've started watching it, and I guess you can consider last year. But even last year, I mean, it was more because we outperformed.
Let me ask you, and this is a real question, Alan, and this is not meant to be a slight. When did
I'm
you start
agreeing with a lot of your points? I think you're making good points.
No, but when did you start watching UCF basketball?
2007.
Okay, so I would argue we've had exciting basketball seasons before even then, but even in the garage, it's just at different levels, right? So Tim says they accused General Grant of being a drunk. Abe Lincoln said he wins. Ask him what his favorite alcohol is. Apparently it's beer, from what I've seen. And I don't know if it's Busch Light or Coors or whatever, but I'm with you, Tim. I mean, at this point, let's just bring somebody in who wins. I love Johnny Dawkins as a human being. He has the ability, I think. He does have cachet. Let's be real. He does have cachet.
Sure.
He was able to bring in recruits because of that cachet. He's got cachet in the DMV, which is one of the most important basketball factories outside of the state of Florida that you can have. DJ has been excellent for us. BJ was excellent for us. He brought in some 4-stars in the past. He has the ability to recruit. The problem has been the coaching on the basketball court. Period. I mean, If you give me Samson, and yes, it's Jordan School and all the other stuff, and Houston has thrown money at that basketball program. But if you give me Kelvin Sampson, as much as I hate to see him strip every game, I think UCF wins more of these games and certainly wins more of these close games. Just my opinion. Josh, do you have one?
I do. I do have a lot of opinions. I like the idea of the well, not the alcohol part, but just win, right? And all the way back to Allen saying that I think you're right. 4th is the highest we've finished since he's been here, regardless of conference.
Mm-hmm. 4th is the highest under Dawkins.
We can go. We can win 18 to 20 games in this conference and go to the NCAA tournament every year. And I think we have the players on the team right now to go to the NCAA tournament. And the reason why they just seem not to click or get over the hump of beating a really good team, which we've seen it go close but no cigar multiple times, at some point, I don't think that's the new reality of college basketball. I feel like that's just us and coaching. And maybe it's not. But
I think that hurts Johnny Dawkins more than if he was not meeting expectations. The fact that he brings us to the edge and doesn't, I'm not going to say it, doesn't get us there.
Preemptive pause.
Preemptive pause. Beep. I'm beeping myself.
This is the problem. Like, that is the problem. We don't see that forward progress, and this year should have been that forward progress. And
we saw the forward progress.
We saw it until, right. At some point, we need to get over the hump. At some point, we need to get back to the NCAA tournament. At some point, you can't. If you look at the talent that's currently on this team, they should be. I don't know.
Alan, let me ask you this. Do you think another coach would have gotten us through those close games or no?
Depends on the coach.
I guess when you put it that way, close games, yes, I'm sure there is a coach out there, but that could have got us over the close games, which would have made a world of a difference. But I just feel year over year, I don't know that there's this coach that could consistently keep us in contention with the budget we have, with the program, how it is historically in its current state. I just don't know there's that coach. Maybe if you take what X coach and put him in this year's roster and you play the same exact game where we're down 1 to Houston or up 1, whatever it was, could he have won the game? Sure. I think, yes, that's absolutely correct. But I just don't know year over year if there's this guy that is making UCF even consistently a top 7, top 8 Big 12 program. Maybe I don't know. I just don't have a ton of faith in the basketball program.
I'm gonna put this to the team here, and I'm gonna start with you. Make a decision. You don't have any time to think about it. You're the AD. Do you fire Johnny Dawkins right now if you had to make the decision right now?
100%, yes.
Okay, Josh?
Not yet.
Okay.
He still gets the rest of the season.
It's just not. He's just not. Right now.
It's not about the rest of the season. I'm just saying, if you were to make a decision, let's assume he makes it through the rest of the season, right?
Okay.
So if you're Terry Mohajir, right, you've got a 20-game season. You've got to make these decisions now, especially if you're going to start calling agents.
You get rid of him.
Yeah.
You get rid of him because he's been here, 9 years now. At some point, you have to have a new direction. At some point, just in general, even, I just think you have to.
All right. Josh, what do you think?
No, that's what I'm saying. If we go to the end of the season, and I'll go with Tim, if we only see like 3 or 4 more wins the rest of the season, he's got to go. He's going to be gone. If somehow we get that late run and actually start doing something.
I didn't ask you if. I said right now, if you had to make that decision, would you let him go?
Yeah.
Okay. There it is. I think you guys know my vote. All right.
Yeah.
That's all we have for basketball this week. We could talk a lot more, but I kind of want to wait for Ben to come back for that. Let's go ahead and pivot. All right, let's go ahead and pivot to some other news. Tim, I know you asked earlier if we were going to cover the interviews this week. We will cover that. But before we start that, I do want to bring up this. The ACC, the much maligned ACC, the Power Four, the fourth out of the Power Four conference, has signed an extension with ESPN, has signed their extension. So this past year, we've had FSU saying, hey, we're going to get out of the conference. You've had North Carolina making a bunch of noise. And they continue, by the way, UNC, to make that noise. I think FSU's kind of sat down because they've had a terrible athletic season, especially in football. But the ACC has had a lot of movement or challenges as a conference. They have signed an extension. So what does that do for UCF? Well, a couple things. You have heard about the SEC and the Big Ten making moves per se, asserting themselves a little bit more. You've got the playoff coming up. There it is. Tim said pivot. All right. All right. Thank you, Tim. Love you, man. So, here's the thing, grand scheme of things. When we joined the Big 12, I said one thing. We cannot, as an athletics department, be gunning for winning the Big 12 championship. We have to position ourselves above and beyond everyone else. Terry Mohajir talked a little bit about the playoff, right? And one of the things he talked about was that ESPN will pay for a 16-team playoff, but they will not pay for a 14-team playoff. That decision is coming up soon, and our relative when it went to the 12-team playoff, our success as a conference kind of relegated us to a lower percentage share of that TV money, which, by the way, according to the contract, caps our ability to pay players, does a lot of different things. The ACC signing does two things for us. They are now locked into 2031. Okay. So that means the brands of FSU and UNC are not going anywhere. All those people that are saying they're going to break the GOR and all that other stuff, that it isn't happening, folks. So that means that we get through the negotiation for the 16-team playoff, which it will be coming. And in Terry Mohajir's interview, he talked to Dennis Dodd, and Dennis Dodd said it was coming this year or next, right? So that means that it hopefully will make sure that if we eventually do go to a Power 3, no matter what, the ACC will anchor and those brands will anchor and make sure that that percentage doesn't get out of hand for the Big Ten and the SEC. So this is huge news for UCF because it gives us time. And we need time to be able to show that we are next in the pecking order when the Florida schools are up. FSU will go to one of the two other conferences, but we want to be next up, and we don't want Miami to be next up. So this gives us time to be able to show that we are the team that should get the bump. And on average, we've got it every 8 years. So this is huge for UCF football. This is huge for UCF as an athletic department, and it gives us time. Any thoughts on that, guys?
I'm a little confused. I thought you said locks in 2031. I thought the grant of rights already locked him into 20, whatever it was, 32, 33. So what's the difference here? Like, I thought they were already locked in, and the whole posturing with FSU, I mean, like, they were trying to find a lawyer that get him out, but I thought they were already stuck no matter what. So what difference is this now?
So as far as
I don't think that 2036 was a lock. I think this extension made it a lock.
So it wasn't real. It was a lock.
Yes, you're right. It's 2036. 2036.
Yeah. But it wasn't.
I said 2031. I should have said 2036.
But I don't think it was guaranteed until this extension was actually signed. And I feel like that FSU and others were trying to use this extension as a wedge between the lawsuits and the other stuff to try to, that's the best way to put it, to try to get out early, if you will. But we'll see what the lawsuits say.
They're double locked in.
I mean, truth be told, I really think that it's money, and the contracts can be broken. Money solves all issues. It just depends on what's going to happen, truthfully.
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that they were going to have a lot of trouble getting out of that. And then when you pair that with how bad Florida State was this year, I mean, I know there was talks of the Big 12 could potentially get Florida State and Clemson, but I mean, I don't think, Florida State is looking as attractive as they were a couple of years ago. And I know, I guess Clemson will always have some suitors, but, we talked about in previous shows where the Big Ten was not a good match for Florida State and Clemson, just by the type of schools that they have. And I don't think the SEC would probably not want to take in Florida State, or Florida wouldn't like that. So I think overall this is good. For UCF, it kind of limits the whole 2 super conference thing, at least delays that for a little while longer. So I think it's overall a good thing.
So from my seat, they are not getting out of the grant of rights.
Right.
Let's just put that to bed right now, right? That's not happening legally. It's not happening financially. If anything, it shows how expensive it is to get out of grant of rights. And the folks that would be paying this money, right, the ESPNs of the world, it would not behoove them to do that either financially and or otherwise, right? So as far as UCF being a fit for the Big Ten, I don't think they're a fit for the Big Ten. I think the FSU is a better fit for the Big Ten than they are for anybody else. Our claim to fame would be making the SEC. But that being said, I think more importantly for the short term, what it does is it gives us time to make a name for ourselves as the state of Florida team, which we've done every 8 years. And 2, it preserves that distance, right? If the ACC went away, as much as we were clamoring for it, and we were talking about P3 during the season and all of that, that's accurate. Dennis Dodd said, to Tim's point, he said 16-team playoff. That means the SEC will demand 8 teams, and the Big Ten will demand 6. Maybe, who knows? But that gives the Big 12 2 teams guaranteed, according to Dennis Dodd. And that's all we care about, because that gives us enough contract value to keep us where we are today and positioned where we are today, no matter what happens in conference alignment. So when it comes to that, I think it's a huge, huge deal. I think it's a harbinger of things to come. And I think ultimately this is a huge one for UCF because it gives us time. And that's the biggest thing that we need right now to be able to get our program up to speed, especially considering that we have been dealing with one hand tied behind our back with the budget, because we have not been getting the full amount. No matter what the Big 12 got, we were not getting that Big 12 full amount, and we will not get that until this academic year. And remember, folks, let's go ahead and pivot again.
To
talk about the interview with Terry Mohajir. So one of the things that people need to remember, in spite of the fact that I love it, Tim. Thank you. He's pivoting with us. In spite of the fact that we will be on the new conference revenue plan and its full share members starting July 1, because it goes by academic year. We will not see that money until the end of the academic year, which will be the following July 1st, right? So we won't see that payout until then. That being said, we will spend that way no matter what, because we're guaranteed those funds. So let's talk a little bit about the Terry Mohajir interview and some of the nuggets that came out of that. We talked about the no back-to-back for schedule. I think that's a huge thing for UCF. He was not happy, and we had very little say in what the schedule actually looked like, but the Big 12 as a conference said no back-to-back. Scott Frost had to get his feet wet. Scott also had an interview where he talked about that with Mark Daniels. I'm hoping we continue to see more of those. Those have a tendency to go away after one or two interviews. So he really had to figure it out, right? Black Friday BYU game, we talked about that. Here's one positive. We had the highest GPA ever for the entire athletic program, including football. So one of the things George O'Leary brought up consistently was that we wanted our academic programs to be first class. That's something that Terry Mohajir has talked about ad nauseum since he first started here and providing opportunities. We are still planning on rev share starting July 1, but we have a plan B. So here's the thing. You've heard throughout college football and media throughout college football that this rev share thing is starting July 1. We've brought in the NIL in-house early before a lot of other people have announced it to gear up for the rev share planning. What we haven't heard, they're still going through the process, and there's actually been some ejectors. Hey, there's Trey Neal.
Hey.
Oh my gosh, he's still Elite Eight or bust. Oh no. You're gonna hide your comment, Trey. I'm sorry, man. That being said, we have a plan B, and it's good to hear that we have a plan B. You heard about the adding 71 scholarships, all of them going through sports outside of football. Baseball and women's sports should really, really, really benefit from that. Basketball will have more funds, comparatively speaking, to what they've had in the past. So in spite of the vast majority of those funds going to football, we will still have more funds going to basketball. So when we start talking about hiring coaches, and I'll give you this, when we were talking about basketball coaches, right? We do not spend nearly as much on the basketball coaches as the rest of the Big 12. That should help. One of the things that Terry Mohajir mentioned, and I wanted to get your guys' take on this, with the settlement, he feels that we are going to be more competitive than what a lot of the other programs are out there. And here's where it's an advantage for us. We've had to work on a small budget. We've done that for a very long time. Everyone else is having a cut to their budget. So tell me a little bit about what you guys think. Will we be more competitive after the settlement with a cap than we would otherwise, keeping in mind Texas used to be the school with the highest budget at $211 million. They are no longer the school with the highest budget at $211 million. UCF's goal is $110 million, which is not even half of what Texas's goal is. So do you feel like we're going to be more competitive after the settlement with the cap, et cetera, because Terry Mohajir does?
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree. We've always been an organization that does less with more. We've always been an organization that needs to punch up. And the reality is we since it wasn't in the budget and we need to take it out, we actually can decide how this works. I don't think we're going to take the full rev share, allegedly. But the reality is that I feel like we're better placed outside of the teams, outside of like the Texases, which will have as much money as they can get no matter the conference because they just have donors and booze. Like there's some teams that just, it's not going to be a huge dent. But for the, maybe say like the Wake Forests of the world.
What was that?
the Wake Forests of the world, the
Forests.
Wake Forests of the world.
That New York accent's coming out loud and proud, my friend.
The Vandies, the big teams that are used to having money hand over fist, and now they actually have to think about it. I think we're better off in some ways. Would I rather have $200 million a year? Of course, but the reality is, I feel like we really are better set because we never had that money as a crutch in the past.
Alan, what do you think?
Alan would love to tell you, but Alan really beats his mic so often that he forgets.
Am I muted? Oh, okay.
No, you're not.
No, you're not.
I didn't mute myself. You guys must have muted me. So I said, "Are you?"
You know, if you didn't beat your keyboard to the fact that they were like flying off, like when you were typing, I think we'd be okay.
I know my question was: are you talking about? Are we going to compete in all sports? You're talking about like a specific sport?
No, I think all sports. Do you think we're more competitive as an athletic department with these limitations now, or do you think we're not? Because Terry Mohajir said that we would be more competitive after the lawsuit goes through than not.
Yeah, I mean, I think we will be more competitive. I mean, I also trust that he knows what he's doing, and if he says that, I have to trust that that's the case. So yeah, I do think we'll, be more competitive. I think, Josh, you alluded to this. I mean, we have always been a school that does more with less, and I think the innovation that we have and we've always proven, getting just with budgets, how we've been able to stretch a dollar. Roger, use your term, maximize your dollar, right? Maximize the budget.
Maximize your ROI, baby.
Yeah, I think UCF will always do that. And I have, while I might not have faith in specific individual programs, I do have faith in the UCF athletics as a whole. Just, decade over decade, year over year, we've continued to see the program grow, whether it's getting into a new conference, reaching new heights with certain teams. And I think that will continue in the future.
Yeah. So for me, just to wrap this up, right? For me, one thing that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to have an advantage of no matter what is that cap at 20% means no matter what, they're going to have more money than we are to play on, to pay football, right? Pay for football. We're going to continue to prop up football. To your point, Josh, we're not going to necessarily have the full cap amount, I don't think, for us to be able to spend. However, right now, we're not competing with Texas. I don't think that's who we're competing against.
No.
I think if you remember our model when we were in the G5, who we were trying to model was Iowa State.
Yeah.
Right? So the Big Ten and the SEC right now, you're looking at 20 to 30 teams, and I don't think we need to compete with them. If we can compete in that 35 to 65 range, we can put competitive sports out there every single day of the week. And I do think this will give us the ability to do that, especially because we don't have a lot of the debt that a lot of these athletic departments are having to carry and having to pay for. And that helps when, look, is Terry Mohajir my favorite AD? Probably not. Is he a good fundraiser? 100%.
Yeah.
Did he get Orlando to spend some money to fund our facilities projects? Yes. What does that mean? That means we can spend more of that money that everybody else is putting towards facilities on the things that matter. So I do think that ultimately his statement is correct. And for those reasons, that we are in a better position than most when it comes to the new post settlement NCAA. All right. One last thing on this from this interview, G5 placement. So One of the things Terry Mahajer brought up, and the only reason I'm bringing it up is because 2 years ago we were G5. Dennis Dodd brought this up as well. Is the G5 automatic bid in jeopardy with what happened with Boise State this past year and what the dynamics are going forward? What does a world look like where the separation isn't actual separation, but the G5 doesn't get the auto bid because it's not guaranteed? And if we're going to renegotiate the 16, UCF is in a good position because we are part of the Power Four, but the G5 is not. What do you guys think is going to happen there? Do you think they retain the auto bid for the G5?
Wait, so what happened? Why? I didn't see this. What happened? Why would they lose the auto bid?
Well, a couple reasons. One, because they don't believe that the G5 is
worthy.
Yeah. And to be frank,
when would this happen to also, sorry?
When the 16 team playoff goes through, which Dennis Dodd and Terry Mahajer both feel that that's going to happen within the next 2 years. Because the Big 12 and the SEC, they have several $1 billion that are sitting out there, and they can't tap into that unless ESPN pays for it, which doesn't happen with 14. It happens with 16. So, two things to consider that I want you guys to think about as we're talking about this. One, we talked about the 72 teams or 74 teams for the power programs when we were outside looking in, right? You've elevated SMU because they paid cash basically on their own, right? You've got UCF that's moved up. You've got Cincinnati that's moved up. You've got Houston that was a former SWAC conference and Big 8 conference that went to the Big 12 got left behind. Houston's back into the power conferences. Do you think this is the time to maximize that revenue that they shut the G5 out? Because I'm not sure Tulane, Memphis, any of those teams, San Diego State, have the cachet to be able to make a material difference when we're talking about billions of dollars being distributed.
I guess I thought the whole point when they did the 12-team playoff was for the equity of getting those one thing. Now they're already going back on, the quality of making sure that one G5 is in there. Now they're already going back on that. Like it would be simply 2 years after. That seems bizarre. I mean, I think especially if you expand it to 16, I don't see why you can't put one of them in there. Now, I guess when you say they lose the auto bid, I guess it doesn't mean that they, in theory, still couldn't get in, right? If you're a top, I don't know how it'll go, but if let's say a Boise State is ranked 11, could they still get in, or are they automatically not, no matter what, could not get included?
Well, let's be realistic. I mean, we were in that position when we were in an undefeated team 2 years in a row, and you saw where our placement was.
But that was a 4-team versus 16, so
it doesn't matter, dude. It really doesn't. When you're talking about billions of dollars, money talks.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, none of those schools, maybe outside of Boise, has the cachet, like a Boise and Boise. That's all I could really have the cachet to really do it. I think, you might see them, or you may, if it does remove the auto bid, you may see a rare scenario like when Cincinnati made it, for example, in the 4-team. I think it's a shame though. I'm never, just because
Cincinnati made it because we.
No, I'm just saying, regardless of the reason, I'm just saying you may see the rare scenario where it happens, but it's a shame. I think, in my opinion, some of those schools will be a legitimate top 16 team that year, regardless of who they face, and deserve a spot. I mean, did Penn State, my whole thing is, I know Penn State beat Boise State pretty bad, but every year I said this, when the whole UCF argument was in 17-18, oh, they get blown out. Every year in the college football playoff, there's massive blowouts. And this happened just again this year. Like, it doesn't mean anything just because there's a blowout that the team didn't, that means that, you don't deserve a spot. You play it on the field. So I think it'd be a shame that if they don't include one, especially if they're deserving, if they go undefeated, they beat some good teams, maybe they beat a Power 5 in their non-conference, and they don't get a chance because of money, I think that's kind of BS, because there's definitely years where Group of Five are easily going to be a top 15, top 16 team that will deserve it over like a number 22 NC State or something like that, or whatever whatever the case may be. So that sucks. Thank God we got on that life raft. That's all I'll say there.
100%. Josh, what do you think?
Man,
you've been doing a lot of huffing and puffing this episode. What's going on with that, man? Yeah, jump off the fence. Let's go.
I like the fence. The fence is nice. The fence is fun. Well, that's the thing. It's everything that we talk about here just makes me so conflicted, right? And that's the problem is where we came from. That's why, like, where we came from, Rain, the watching grainy TV on old internet to see an Akron game of me.
Let me pause you there. Where we came from is not where we are, right? And we earned our.
Let me get there.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Get there. Sorry. So that old brain of me, that Maction brain of me is like, of course the G5 deserves something, right? That's, of course they do, because we've been there. And then
you picked the worst conference that we were in as far as like our.
I agree, but that's the point. The UCF and the MAC, like Kruzik was getting all huffy and puffy. If you're talking about huffy and puffy, and we got smacked down on the MAC, and now we should probably beat every team, but who knows? I mean, Northern Illinois moving, but beat Notre Dame, so. That me thinks sure. And then current me thinks pull up the ladder. We see where this is going. It's been there's 60, 70 teams that are in the Power Four. See ya. And then part of me goes, well, that's what the SEC and the Big 12, Big 10 want to do, and we don't want to be off that, and we don't want to have the ladder pulled from us.
Listen, the reality of it is that they cannot do it with the number of teams that they have now. Even if they both go to 20 and it's a 40 team,
I tend to agree. So I'll get the fence is nice and cozy, but I will get to that. I still feel like there has to be at least a space for that.
There has to be.
I do.
All I can say is if you continue tiptoeing the fence, eventually you're going to slip, and that's not going to be pretty, Josh. That being said, I don't think so. I think when you're talking about billions of dollars and where we are with college football today, right or wrong, needless to say, this is not about right or wrong. This is about where we are. They pulled the G5 teams that matter up. Including BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, etc.
But not that team. There's a subtle
thing because they don't matter. Let's be real about that team, right? So Green UConn, right? That's who you're referencing, I'm assuming, right? So Green UConn, no. Oh, what team were you talking about?
That team doesn't matter either. But the other team that was in the
USF.
Yes,
we don't. The
fact
Green UConn
is great.
Number one, that's Green UConn, and number two, we don't say the cows.
Yeah, but that's funny. You didn't even think that, but that's the thing. Like, we've pulled up the ladders. No one else is coming. Boise State's a phenomenal team, and their college history is not going to help them out with anything. So
I think Boise State will help themselves because Boise, Idaho is expanding leaps and bounds, right? So I think once their DMA gets where it is, but let's be real. You're talking about 2.3 million in the Orlando metro. You're talking about Houston, which has more than that, right? You're talking about Cincinnati, which has about the same. When it comes to dollars and cents, and that's what college football is about right now. Mm-hmm. I said this in 2012 when we were on the cusp of joining the Big East. It's about DMAs. It's about those dollars, and no, it's not the same calculus as it was when Rutgers joined the Big Ten. Right? If we were talking about Rutgers today, they would not be in the Big Ten. That being said, at the end of the day, that's what it's about. So I do think that the G5's auto bid is in jeopardy. I do think there is consolidation, that's on the horizon. And I do think UCF is well positioned. And I do think that the ACC extending helps us with that long term. So let's go ahead and join with Tim and pivot. All right, pivot. We're going to do a little bit of listener love this week. Unfortunately, not as many comments as usual. So please make sure that you're commenting, etc. But I do want to shout out Jeremy UCF. Welcome. He did follow us the past couple weeks. We did have several other followers that followed us, but unfortunately you guys have your account set to private, so I can't see who you are. That being said, we appreciate everyone that follows, likes, subscribes, comments. It makes our show better because ultimately it is for you. So please make sure to keep those comments going. If you don't like what Josh says at a hoops game, go ahead and say so. If you tell Josh to stay home when he's going to a hoops game, go ahead and say so. If you don't like what I say, tell me about it. We love to have that dialogue. So thank you so much to Jeremy, UCF, and welcome to the family. All right, let's go ahead and pivot again.
Pivot.
All right, to Alan's Oxymoronic stat of the week. Do you have a stat for us this week?
You know what? I'm going to give you one that you don't want to hear, but you need to hear. Okay.
Okay.
And I pivoted myself to this.
Wow.
And I just wanted a little bit about the basketball history. So
no.
Stop pivoting yourself, Alan. Stop it.
All right. So, all right. We joined Conference USA 19 years ago. So I'm going to use that as the starting point because, that at the time was a bigger conference than the ASUN. And in 19 seasons, which includes Conference USA, the American, and the 1 year of the Big 12 that we've completed so far, we have had a winning record in the conference 6 out of 19 seasons. So I'm going to have to dispute the fact that we've been competitive in any of the conferences when 13 out of 19 have ended in a losing season. Not even just, I don't even mean, top 3, we're talking, we didn't even have a winning record conference wise. And 13 out of those 19 seasons, we finished in 5th or worse place. So I don't think it's just Memphis, UConn, and Cincy. We were finishing worse than a lot of other teams. And that is my Oxymoronic stat.
Temple when they were good, right? I'm just saying.
I guess then.
All right. All right. So there you go. That puts us right in 5th place. All right. Alan, on that positive note, let's go ahead and pivot again to Josh's sometimes funny fact of the week. Josh, take it away.
So I'm going to try to be a little more, a little more positive. So what's interesting, I won't say even positive. When we're talking baseball, we have optimism there because we haven't played a game, and what we saw last year was pretty darn amazing, generally speaking. And as you talked about earlier, we play Siena a lot. We've been playing in the last 14 seasons. We've played them often. Last 20 or so seasons, we played them often. When's the last time we did not face Siena? And what was the opponent?
Last year.
In the first game of the season.
Last year. And who was the opponent? Oh. I want to say it was a Bulldog. Was the
Samford
mascot? No, it was not Samford. Started with a B.
Butler.
Bryant.
Nice pull.
We are playing Bryant this year.
I think we started the season with Bryant last year.
Are we sure about that?
Pretty sure.
So what I have is not that. Let me double check. Yeah, we got Bryant. You were correct. I was going to go further back than that.
I was like, all right, who's the baseball fan here? All right.
I was going to go further back than that, but I think that was the one year we got kicked out. It's actually been interesting. It was that, and if you go back all the way to 2021,
Josh's fact was not a fact.
You want to know why the fact was not?
But it was not a fact.
You know why the fact was wrong, and I'm going to blame AI on this. AI was even wrong too. I'm going back to 2029. We've been playing them. It's like every single year. What was it? 2018. If we're not playing Siena, I guess Brian, we had that one year. We're playing like ranked FAU, ranked Virginia. It's really interesting. Actually, I was going to go back to the last time we were playing on my birthday, which was February 16th in 2018, and we beat Virginia in the first game of the season. So yeah, we've played Siena a lot, but hopefully we'll play them more again. How about that?
Well, I mean, so, as a baseball fan, one of the things that I will say is that Coach Lovelady got into it with the coach of Siena a couple seasons ago.
40-year coach, right? Something like that.
Yeah. So he retired. Yeah. And, we were talking to Coach Wally before we started the show. And one of the things that he had mentioned was that there was a certain former UCF player who was, and I had forgotten about this, was the interim coach for Siena, and they did not have a game for the opening game. And because that person was a former UCF baseball player, we re-signed that agreement, and that is why we were playing Siena to start the season again, as we have historically for the better part of 20 years.
Yeah. Easily, like, might have missed a couple years. And side note, we are playing Bryant next weekend. Well, actually not this coming, but next weekend on the 21st. So those Bulldogs are coming back.
All right. Well, now that we've gotten through that, let's go ahead and talk about a quick update on other UCF sports that Alan does not watch. So there's been a lot, and there's been a whole lot of success. Josh, why don't you walk us through that?
Okay. It might be not as quick, but I'm going to try to make it quick because we're 2:30 in. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. You know what isn't going on? Women's basketball winning. The battle for the bottom of the conference has now begun. We are now 1-11. We lost to BYU and Provo in a close one. They're like 3-9.
We beat Houston.
We did. That was last episode. I know you weren't here, but we lost. We beat Houston. They had like 6 girls on their team total. We lost to BYU in Provo in a close one. It was 66-73. They're like 3-9, so they're not great. And we drove up I-15 to Salt Lake City, where you can find Roger, I guess, sometimes. And we just got blown out of that place.
Park City, Utah, baby.
Yeah, 51-95. It was bad. Thankfully, Houston is 1-12 in conference, so we are not in last place. We may have a chance against Arizona State at home on Wednesday, February 12th at 7 p.m. They are 8-16. They're just as bad as us. More than likely, we're going to not win versus number 14 Kansas State on Saturday, February 15th at 5 p.m. Now, we did have Coach.
Real quick before you keep going. Joe Sheridan, by the way, was the interim head baseball coach at Siena College in 2023. If you guys remember, Joe Sheridan was a player for UCF, and that's what I was alluding to earlier. I just wanted to make sure we got that in for those baseball fans that may be watching. All right, go ahead, Josh.
No problem. And speaking of baseball, that's going to start this weekend, as we were talking earlier. Starts on Valentine's Day as well, with our almost annual first series with Siena at 6:30 p.m. That series... See, I was prepping for it, and the series continues on Saturday at 6:30 and Sunday at 1 p.m. Hopefully, we will be 3-0.
Remember, Knights fans, whether you're boys and girls, this is an opportunity for you to vet your future significant other, whether you're male or female. Make sure you take that prospective partner to that baseball game. If they last the entire game, which they should, we are going to give them the old TK1 seal of approval to potentially move forward with your relationship. All right, go ahead, Josh.
Now, if you really want to test that relationship, let's talk about number 20 women's tennis. They beat the Cows they beat FIU. That's a Tampa. No, they already beat FIU the week before. They beat the Cows. It says beat FIU, beat the Cows. They beat the Cows 4-0 last week.
Sorry, Josh, I threw you off. I added that on there because that happened yesterday. So they beat the Cows yesterday 4-0, and I had to get that in there.
Yes, of course, and as we should beat them in Tampa. So if you want to test your relationship, first you go to the USTA National Campus at Lake Nona and spend your Valentine's Day morning at the 12 o'clock game versus Stetson. Then, if you
get them a good brunch, get them a good brunch.
Good. And then you can either stick around to see 6 p.m. At 6 p.m. You can see Air Force on Valentine's Day, or you can go to the John, and I love it's called the John, to see Sienna at 6:30. If you do stick around for the Air Force game, that is Nona Knights happy hour, so that should be fun. Yes, and I see that Roger has added some things to here that was not in here anyway, and this is why he's messing me up. Tennis is really, really good, and it's
men's and women's,
and unfortunately, it finally happened. The number 21 men's tennis team lost to Miami last week 2-4, but they did avoid the road sweep by beating FAU 4-3 in Boca. So if you happen to be a listener from Waco, Texas, and you want to avoid Magnolia Market on Valentine's Day, then check out your nights at the ITA Indoor Championships. The time is TBA. Softball is playing a lot of games. Within, I believe, 10 or 12 days, they're going to be playing 13 total games. They're already played 6 the last, as of recording, for watching live, like 5 days. They beat CSU Bakersfield, NC State, Illinois twice, and James Madison last week. Their only loss was a 4-0 loss to number 12 Georgia. Of note, Yesenia Lopez, she's a freshman from New York, and I was doing that for New York, both for me and for Nobra, but he's out. She's slinging it. She's doing really, really well, which is awesome.
Let me put you. Let me do you one better, right? So, pitching always, going with the baseball theme. Yeah. Pitching always outperforms hitting early on. So there's some concerns about the hitting early on. We did have a new pitching or hitting coach this year. But I will say this. You should be paying attention to someone with the last name of Felton because she is a pitcher. Last year, she did really, really well. She came back this year and pitched really, really well against Illinois. And with softball, it is all about the pitching. If you've got a few aces, at least 2, hopefully 3, you're going to go a long way. So if you are not watching softball, go and watch softball because it is one of our more successful programs, and it is a program that is worthy. It's fun. It's 2 hours per game. It's 7 innings typically. I know Alan does not go and watch softball, partly because he's down south. But that being said, go watch softball. It's one of our best programs, and they do a great job. All right, go ahead, Josh. I'm sorry to have sidetracked you there.
Yet again. I will say Lena Elkins, also not a bad name. If we're going 3 deep on the pitchers, she had a complete game against Illinois. There's some talent there, and I have heard the whispers of batting being an issue. We are going to find out really, really quickly because we have 7 games through Sunday coming to you. The Battle of the Cartwrights is number 15. Mizzou comes to UCF at the Plex on Tuesday, February 11th. at 6 p.m. The next day at 5
With
p.m.
new seats, all new seats that have been installed at the Flex. I'm just saying, we don't have shades yet, but we do have
it's coming.
Chair backs, new chair backs.
Yeah. The next day at 5 p.m. we have number 20 Liberty, so back-to-back top 20 teams in the Strikeout Cancer Pink Out game. So it's all pink gear and stuff like that. I'm sure will be wonderful. If you live by the Cows, you have 5 games coming to you. It's 5 games from Friday to Sunday at the 2025 Shriners Children's Clearwater Invitational. Say that 5 times fast.
So UCF West.
Yes. And Tampa's also hometown team. We have 2 games on Valentine's Day. So if you don't want to go take your significant other to tennis and baseball, and you happen to live by UCF West, you can take them to a 11 a.m. softball game against number 5 Texas A&M, and then Auburn at 3:30 p.m. on Saturday. They catch the Knights against number 25 Clemson at 9 a.m. And I've been to that complex. 9 a.m. is a tough time.
Well, I mean, not only that, but I mean, let's be real. UCF loaded up, and this is Coach Bear's strategy, right? So she wants to test the ladies early and often, and she's done this every single season.
Yes.
And I definitely recommend going and watching because, if you are in Tampa's hometown team, definitely go watch that team. Otherwise, go watch and support Rich Wallace in baseball because he and the team are well worth it and worth your attention. And this is someone who made it to the tournament last year, and I expect even more this year out of this baseball team than we got last year.
Absolutely. And so the birthday present to me on Sunday is hopefully watching the Knights beat Ohio State at 1 p.m. Eastern and number 7 FSU at 8 p.m. So every single one of these games are on ESPN Plus, except for the FSU game. That's actually on big ESPN, not the Ocho, but main ESPN. And last but certainly not least, and that was a long update. It's not quick this time, but there's a lot of stuff going on. Our women's track and field team, we haven't talked about them a lot this year, but they're doing some pretty big things you might not know about. They broke a decade-old 4x400 record. We've won in the last couple of meets 60-meter hurdles, 600-meter. In the last, I think, 2 meets, we had our team bring in 4 personal records and 4 top 10 finishes in the mile. And the team only has 2 meets left before the Big 12 championship in Lubbock, Texas, the weekend of February 28th.
And that's saying a lot because some of the talent that's gone through UCF is, Octavia should ring a bell if you guys are UCF track folks, and a little someone who made it to the Olympic trials the year before last. We've got some excellent track and field folks, so make sure you're checking them out and following them as we go.
Yes.
All right. Well, as Tim says, excellent show. Thanks for allowing me to comment. Tim, thank you for commenting. We appreciate you as well. As far as final thoughts for this week, let me say this about them. We talked a lot about the future. We talked a lot about UCF and the things that we are coming to enjoy. As much as we love football and this, I mean, let's be real, as a football heavy show, we've got 2 former players, etc. We love basketball as well. But the spring sports do not disappoint, and UCF has strong spring sports. So make sure that you're continuing to support. Thank you, Coach Rich Wallace, for joining us on the show for the 2nd year in a row. We appreciate him. He bleeds as black and gold as we do, as much as Alan does, as much as Trey does, as much as Ben does, as much as Josh does, as much as Nobra does, who's currently going to school at UCF. So make sure that you're supporting them because those guys are going to do a lot of great things this year. They got to the tournament last year, the regional. We talk about Orto and on the road to Omaha quite a bit. That team was very, very close to making it. And we have a lot of confidence in Coach Rich Wallace and his ability to do it. And more importantly, he loves UCF and supports UCF as much as we do. So make sure that you catch his interview earlier. Thank you for your support. We appreciate the comments, the follows, the support, and everything that you guys do for us. Go Knights and
charge on.
Charge on, baby. See, Alan, that's how you do it.
Yeah. I mean, this is what happens when we're almost 3 hours in. I'm going to say more things now.